Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday night, the 27th of February, and in the state of Michigan, it's voting day, otherwise known as the Michigan primary. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. We are on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We are on Twitter. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, as the boys from Emerson, Lake, and Palmer once sang. We're glad to have you here. Settle in, folks, because for the next couple or 3 hours, we're going to be talking all things Michigan. And no, we're not talking about Wolverines versus Spartans either. We're talking about Democrats versus Republicans. We're talking about Biden versus Trump. We're talking about uncommitted versus committed. There's all kinds of angles from which to cover this primary. And the best group of non-network commentators is going to get together tonight and lay it all out for you. So, as usual, I'm joined by some of my most fabulous guests and people actually willing to be associated with me, more importantly. We start first with Reuben Christopher Haynes. Good evening, Reuben. How you doing tonight?
Doing well.
All right, good to see you. And as always, from the Dangerous Rhetoric Podcast, the one, the only, the ever wise, Mr. Brently. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, sir. We have some other guests. They'll be joining us in a little bit as they have other things to do, like eat food and do videos. But they'll explain all that when they get here. Gentlemen, it is a few days since we've gathered together. The last time we did was South Carolina, and I would be remiss if we didn't start off our discussions with at least a cursory review of what happened that night. And boy, was it interesting. These are more or less the final tally results from South Carolina. With 99% of the vote in, Donald Trump finished up with 59.8. Former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, finished with 39.5 for a difference of little over 20. The raw vote total that Trump got, according to people who are in the know, was the highest vote total in a primary in South Carolina history. Now, I don't know if that's Democrats and Republicans, but for sure, on the Republican side, Trump smashed the record. And Nikki Haley's 298,000 also represents another record, the largest margin of defeat by a resident of the state who is not operating in a suspended campaign.
Wow.
In other words, she was actively campaigning, got trounced by 20 points, and that is the largest margin of defeat ever in the state of South. I'm pretty sure at minimum the state of South Carolina, perhaps ever anywhere in the U.S.
And also, declared victory anyway.
And declared victory anyway. I mean, I've heard of Democrats moving goalposts, but I tell you what, this woman could link together football fields like model trains on a track. Is how much she can move goalposts around. It's ridiculous. Absolutely.
Or serves the football team in the back of her car.
She's crazy Looney Tunes, and this is just so emblematic of people who have Trump derangement syndrome. They are delusional in their belief that they're right even when they're wrong. Sweetie, you lost by 20 points. If that was a general election, we would call that a landslide.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would have been, and much like what happened that night on Saturday, it would have been called in the first few minutes. They wouldn't have even bothered waiting for the vote tally to come in, which is exactly what happened. The exit polling was so good that they nailed it that night. Now, a couple other points to make, and I will bring these up. My favorite pollster that I follow, who's accurate and honest, Rich Barris, made a very valid point as it related to the Republican primary of South Carolina. Now, remember, that was an open primary. Democrats and independents could cross over and vote Republican. And I want you to take a look at this tweet, because if you think that 20-point loss is bad, Barris brings up something that most people are not considering, and it's this. And the stupid remarks continue. It's only a matter of time. Republicans will never accept Nikki Haley after this. Never. They hate her guts, and precinct data suggest that without primary pivot or PACs motivating behavioral Democrats, she would have lost 75-25. And this is not just some random thing. On his show on Monday, Barris was talking about this, that he's doing precinct level work. And if you take out the Democrat independent vote that she got on Saturday, she loses 3-1. That's how bad it would have been had this been a close primary. And when Christian Watson gets here, I'm going to ask him about this, because I remember the night we did Iowa, this very subject came up, and it's just remarkable. Now, to go back to one other thing, and I'll turn it back over to you guys. We were trying to figure out how many delegates it worked out to for Trump that night, because it's not a pure winner take all system. It's vote day of, and then it's also apportioned on the basis of congressional districts. Well, from what it looks like, of the 50 delegates up for grabs, because Nikki Haley carried South Carolina 1, which is Nancy Mace's district, of the 50 delegates, she came out of it with a whopping 3. That's how bad it was for her. So yeah, just by way of catching up, folks, on what happened. And now we're rolling into Michigan. So gentlemen, I'll throw it to you. Your thoughts at this point.
Well, I just think it's funny, and we're going to see it again tonight. I feel like tonight is going to be something very similar, and we're just going to be laughing because she'll probably again lose horribly and declare victory. And this is just so like we are in this topsy-turvy bizarro world where politicians are just allowed to lie as long as their lies are in favor of whatever the establishment nonsense du jour is. And Nikki Haley is very obviously just an avatar for the establishment. She goes, everything that she says is basically just like approved by the Koch brothers, or the last remaining Koch brother, or the board of Raytheon, or whoever is
Exactly.
going to those little retreats in the darkness in the woods in Northern California.
Reuben, I'll throw it over to you, and then we want to say hello to some folks in chat who are already here, and they're already tweeting and gettering and gabbing and truth socialing on our behalf, of which we are greatly appreciative. So go.
Very, very, very distinct. The fact that this is that she should not be in this race anymore. The fact that she's in it is a travesty to the system. She's being propped up by just big money establishment. And I'll correct you, but I'll just say this is not about Republicans and Democrats anymore. It's about the uniparty and the resistance, people who free thinking Americans, and the mainstream narrative. It's horrifying what they're doing here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we would be remiss if we didn't say hello to some folks in chat who have already been here and they're posting messages. Good evening, ma'am. Pleasure to see you. The victory banner you're already working on. Your lips to God's ear, sister. That's all I'm saying. To Mr. John McGarvey, he says, did you catch Trump's lawyer on Zoom not wearing? Oh, no.
It wasn't Trump's lawyer. There was a lawyer in the Trump RICO case for one of the 18 code.
Oh, okay.
What's his name? Hold on, I'll find it.
Okay. Well, while you're
Steve Sato, there's a Trump lawyer who was, they said he was wearing a brown shirt with no jacket and tie. And Harrison Floyd's lawyer, Chris Kacharoff,
okay. Yes.
was not wearing any pants in his office.
Well, hopefully he wasn't pulling a Tubin. So that's all I'm saying. So, there you go. Apparently we didn't see it. Y'all did. I have not heard about that. Yeah, some of the lawyering that was done today was left a little to be desired. I will say that. Hello, Miss Asta. Good evening to you. Let's see, who else have we got here? Hello, Miss Gypsy. Glad to see you. And Mr. Bryce Cooley is back with us. Says a record number of. Oh, we're going to get to this, but I'm glad you brought this up. My prediction is right. A record number of Muslim voters have voted uncommitted. So, in other words, Trump has a very good chance of winning Michigan in November. Biden is under hot water. And
well,
Gypsy. Yeah,
that
go
was
ahead,
a protest. That was a protest vote. Like, was it Rashida Tlaib was like talking about telling people to vote uncommitted to send Biden a message over the Israeli-Gaza situation.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll get to that. And I know, without saying where, I know that some people in this audience are resident Michigalanders. So all of y'all Michigan folks, if you got any local anecdotes, stories you can pass on, drop them in chat, be it on YouTube, on Rumble. We'd love to hear from people on the ground. We are not the fanciest operation in the world. We don't have all the slickest graphics or everything else, but we've got raw honesty, and we'll always tell you what we think. We love the interaction with our audience. So anything you guys can bring to the table that makes us even better, that's just fabulous for us. Bryce also says if the DNC had doubts about Biden, I bet they will endorse Newsom to replace him during the DNC's convention in Chicago. There's a lot of talk about this, a lot of talk. So we'll see what happens. But to go back to what Bryce was saying, and I don't know how many folks in chat have heard about this. There is a very serious move afoot among Palestinian Americans living in Michigan, whereas in Nevada, in the Republican primary, Nikki Haley lost to none of these candidates. Well, there is a slot on the ballot for something known as uncommitted.
Interesting.
Now, this gets in. Now, you're right. You used the right word. There is a very serious move afoot among Palestinian Americans in Michigan in protest over how Biden is handling the U.S.'s response to the Israel-Hamas war. They are urging each other, hey, you don't vote for Biden in this primary, you vote uncommitted. Now, the goal they've set, the number that I've heard thrown around, is 10,000. So, like I say, if anybody who's in Michigan is getting reports on the ground, let us know what you're hearing. But that's the number that's out there. And to go to Rashida Tlaib, who is a congresswoman from there, I want to play you. She posted something on Twitter, which is really kind of surprising. So take a listen to this and tell me what you guys think. This runs about a minute. And if we need to break it up, we will.
Everyone, it's Rashida. I was proud today to walk in and pull a Democratic ballot and vote uncommitted. We must protect our democracy. We must make sure that our government is about us, about the people. When 74% of Democrats in Michigan support a ceasefire, yet President Biden is not hearing us. This is the way we can use our democracy to say, listen to Michigan. Listen to the families right now that have been directly impacted, but also listen to the majority of Americans who are saying enough. No more wars. No more using our dollars to fund a genocide. No more. So please take your family members. Use our democratic process to speak up about your core values, where you want to see our country go. I know taking my first time voter, my 18-year-old son, to the polls today was so incredibly empowering too. And he felt it. And I told him, you right now did it for not only Sidra and Rima, which those images have never left any of us, but you also did it to protect our democracy.
I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me in trouble, but then again, what else is new? This is one of those moments where we're doing it for different reasons, but the sentiment that says no more foreign wars or funding thereof, sister, I'm right there with you, but for different reasons perhaps than what you're doing it. I mean, but if this sentiment takes a hold tonight in Michigan, now look, Biden's going to win the primary. If he loses this primary, I'll be shocked. Well, but that said, I want to see how much vote Dean Phillips gets, and I want to see how big this vote on uncommitted gets.
What was the one? Was it Nevada, or what was the one where Biden actually did lose theoretically?
Well, he was not on the ballot in New Hampshire. Okay. Technically speaking, he did and didn't lose. They did a write-in campaign on his behalf up there.
Correct. The write-in candidate, yeah.
But and I will give credit where it's due. There's another what I call polytube commentator, goes by the handle Real American, and he made a very fascinating point today. He said, if you really want the first test of how much trouble Joe Biden's got inside the base of his party, Michigan's going to tell the story. Because up to now, Democrats have been crossing over, into the Republican primary. Yeah, there's still an open primary tonight, but you can't figure that Biden is going to let a whole lot of Democrats go strolling on over to start messing around in the GOP's primary. And with that said, one of our favorite people has just arrived and has just finished editing one of his videos. Please welcome the Professor Christian Watson. Good evening,
Hello.
Sir. How you doing?
Good. How are you? How are you doing?
Working and living the dream, man. Working and living the dream. God help me. I think you
Yeah,
know all
that's-
these fine. I think you know all these fine gentlemen who are afoot in
Absolutely.
this room.
How are you doing, Reuben and Brently?
Very well. Nice seeing you here again.
Absolutely, you too.
We were just talking about, and you're probably up on this. There is a gigantic move afoot in the Michigan primary on the Democrat side to have the uncommitted vote against Joe Biden. And I didn't know if you had any thoughts on it, or if you'd heard about it, or what your take is on the whole
No,
thing.
I didn't hear about this. Tell me more. I did not hear about this at all. I'm curious.
Okay. Here's what's going on. The Palestinian American community in Michigan, in a form of protest against Joe Biden's handling of the U.S. response to the Israel-Hamas war, is urging their fellow Palestinian Americans not to vote for Biden, but to vote for, and I'll put it back up here on the screen, to vote for uncommitted. There is a slot on the ballot for uncommitted. Now, they've set a benchmark. Yeah, they've set a benchmark of 10,000. Now, to give you some perspective on this, let me find it real fast, because there's somebody had run some numbers on this. I hadn't had a chance to look at it. Here it is. These are uncommitted in the Michigan primary. These are vote totals from previous primaries. They got 19,000 in 2020. In 16, it was 22,000. 10,000 is not that far of a stretch. If these numbers are historically accurate, it wouldn't take much for them to get 10,000 easy. If they get close to these numbers, Joe Biden's got problems, big problems,
Or higher than that.
or even higher. It's conceivable, because there's a very big Muslim American population in Michigan in various cities. So, like I say, this could get real interesting this evening.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Democratic Party made a very big mistake by catering to the most extreme part of their coalition, while not recognizing that there are a bunch of people that don't, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, I'm just going to be very honest tonight. There's a bunch of people that don't hold American ideas, that live in large swaths in our country. Dearborn, Michigan is the highest Muslim per capita in the entire nation. And Dearborn, Michigan happens to be the place where if you are gay, it is a hostile place to live. If you have a certain lifestyle they don't agree with, it is a hostile place to live. Having said that, that kind of demographic still votes for the Democrats for the same reasons that most minorities vote for Democrats. So the strategy that they employed, having this sort of broad-ranging coalition that embraces sexual minorities, embraces gender ideology, identity politics, so on and so forth, that only plays for a certain base of people, right? And each group has its own wedge issue. And for the Palestinian Americans, the Arab Americans, for the vast majority of them, Israel is a wedge issue. And so I think this just reflects a lack of political astuteness on the part of the Democrats. They don't understand that when you have a bunch of coalitions and you're trying to unify them politically, you're going to have to appeal to all of them in some way, shape, and form. And by going hard to the left, by endorsing things that Muslims don't frankly agree with, whether it be the endorsing support for Israel, which some Democrats have certainly done, whether it be endorsing gender ideology, which a lot of Democrats absolutely do, whether it be endorsing re-education programs in school, which Democrats absolutely do. Remember, it was the Muslim Americans that actually one of the people that came out against a lot of the gender queer and gender ideology stuff happening in schools. Yes. That's not an accident. But the Democratic Party has been the leading political force propelling those things forth. So maybe this is just another example of their lack of political astuteness. Who knows? But none of this surprises me. I think that Joe Biden has handled Israel-Palestine absolutely horribly. I think that he's handled it horribly. I think that there should have been peace a long time ago. But Biden has been actively intervening on the part against Israel's ability to actually do things. You see, That's the problem. He's been actually obstructing their ability to actually do things. If he was really serious about peace, he would fly out to Israel again. He would sit there for a week, talk to Netanyahu, talk to the guy who's in exile, and the Palestinian guy who's in exile, who we funded back in 2005, who ended up not succeeding. Talk to him and say, hey, America will not give you any of you, either of your sides, any more money until we can actually get peace here. Until then, the money stops. You would get peace within a few days, if not a few hours, because this war does not last if America stops funding both sides. But the goal has never been peace. It's never been a ceasefire. The goal has entirely been continuing to fund the war machine, to push the geopolitical aims of NATO, the Atlantic Council, and every single other person that benefits from these continuous conflicts happening and continuing to rip apart our world. So that's the black pill for you, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I agree completely. And that's the idea. We're basically 2024 is 1968 all over again. You're going to have the Democratic Party is going to rip itself apart if it continues to try and fund these wars. You've got the European Union saying that Ukraine will be part of NATO, which is a powder keg, a grenade to launch World War III. And you've got the Houthi going on. And Iran. Now you got Hamas. You got the trifecta of evil right there. You got three big conflicts in this area, and it's the same old story. And again, you got when Biden and Haley and Romney and Lindsey Graham, who was booed when Trump was on the stage, all agree in the fact that war is good. It's terrifying. And again, Trump could change this around. Remember when the DA in Georgia went after him, and then New York, the black community really rallied around him because, again, yeah, he's feeling our pain. He understands us, and again, Trump has always been a really powerful voice to empower the black family, and that's what happened under him. Black unemployment went down, black employment went up. We were thriving. And then now it's back again. You are the victim. You're doing this. And then, yes, well, believe we're going to go back on the plantation per se. That's the whole idea. That's what they were trying to. They want everyone to be separated. And what they did in 68, what they did to the black community, why they put liquor stores in the community, why they told black mothers to leave their husbands because they could get more money from daddy government. It's crazy. And then they caused Vietnam. Now they're causing these three conflicts in a row. And again, it's enough of this stuff. Stand up and say no more. No more funding for anybody. They're acting like children. Ukraine, Russia, no more funding. Iran, no more funding. Because if you remember, no more funding. We never funded them. Yes, we did. The $400 million that went over to Obama sent before he left. And then now the same thing here. No more money for you, Israel. And then you have to get to the table. If they did this, remember, Trump went to North Korea, shook his hand, and we had some peace going on there. And now you got, again, everyone's in the whole reason this is happening is for one thing. Yep. We're in a silent recession going into a global depression because we're spending too much money. $34 trillion is unsustainable. And we are the reserve currency, and we're going to pay the price. And you see that by what the food you buy, you see that by the inflation, and they're trying to put the blame on businesses. No, it's this whole system is corrupted, and you see it in every single thing that we talk about. And that is why you have none of the above beating out Haley. That's why you have uncommitted in Michigan, because the people are fed up with this crap. And we have to unite. It is no longer about Democrat or Republican. It's about the people have to stand up. This is our government. You had things going on today in Congress. Laura Logan talked about what they're doing, what they're trying to do to Tucker Carlson. The media is terrifyingly out of control, and the system has to be challenged now.
Absolutely, and good time to bring in this gentleman who has just arrived, the man from the Midwest himself, the great son of the Great Plains, Mr. Chad Manley. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Hey, doing all right. Thank you for having me.
Very, very good to have you here. We're just, kind of getting everything warmed up. To get everybody up to speed who happens to be watching and will be watching later on, Michigan is a little bit like Florida in this respect. It's broken up in two time zones. The majority of Michigan is on Eastern Standard. The Upper Peninsula is on Central, and it's been agreed by all parties no call is made on either of the races, Democrat or Republican, until the polls close 9 p.m. Eastern on the Upper Peninsula, which is 8 p.m. Central to them out there. So, but we do have numbers that are already starting to come in, and unlike New Hampshire, this time I figured out how to get it right. So I don't look like a total schlub. But anyway, with that said, So far on the Republican side, and there's just 2% statewide voting. It's a pretty sizable lead. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Michigan, much like South Carolina, much like New Hampshire, is open primary. But I don't know how much crossover you're going to get from Dems going over because Joe Biden is on the ballot tonight. And with that said, we'll flip it over and see what goes on the Democrat side. And ooh, that uncommitted vote. And again, it's just 4%. And like I said, Biden's going to be declared the winner almost instantly when they call this. But that uncommitted vote's pretty, at least by a percentage anyway, at this point is pretty substantive. And Chad, I don't know how much you've heard about this yet, but on the Democrat side, the Palestinian American community in Michigan is urging each other, and yeah, okay, you're nodding, so you've heard about this. They're urging each other to vote uncommitted, not for Biden, just like, nope, we're going to show you how much we don't like what's going on. So we'll be checking on this about every 10, 15 minutes as it goes by. So, and
Brian, can you go back to the Republican one super quick?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, so what I'm interested in is voter turnout. Because
that's a good question.
I see 28,000 total for the Republicans. For the Democrats, it looked like 40,000 total, but they were reporting a slightly higher percentage. So, but when all is said and done, I'm going to be more interested in the total turnout for Democrats, because I could see an event where all the votes are counted at the end of the night, and it turns out that a bunch of Democrats just stayed home because they didn't care about Biden.
Well, and that's another good point that none of us had brought up yet, is that, okay, you've got the Palestinian American community in Michigan trying to get everybody to vote uncommitted. How many people are you going to have stay home that just, they have no great love for Biden, and they're like, nope, we're not even going to bother. We're just going to send our message by not voting, which for November, that's an even scarier proposition, to be perfectly frank. It really is. There is no great love for Joe Biden in the Democrat Party, and you could make an argument never has been, but especially starting last January, February, when people started tracking this, when 25 or 30% of his own party is trying to say, we don't want him to run. So
that's why I say Chicago in this summer for the convention is going to be 1968 all over again. It's going to be a shit show. It's going to be insane.
And you have to wonder, come November, if Democrats are going to be persuaded to go out just to vote against Trump, or if their indifference towards Biden is going to keep them home. You really got to wonder who becomes the marginal voter. In 2020, it was low propensity voters who started participating in large numbers because they could vote by mail. Because all of a sudden, the effort needed to cast your ballot was very, very low. So a bunch of people who would have stayed home or who would have skipped voting entirely now could vote from the comfort of their own couches and then mail it in. Yeah. This time around, a lot of those people, by the way, ended up voting for Joe Biden. This time around, those folks aren't going to have that luxury. If they want to vote, they're going to have to leave their homes and go do it, even if they can vote early in their own states, or even if they can vote by mail, they're going to have to provide a sufficient reason for voting by mail. Most people probably won't be able to do that. And then all of a sudden, a lot more energy is required to put in order to cast your ballot. And it's going to be a lot of those voters who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 who are going to say this time around, okay, I'm just not going to do it. So you have to wonder which is going to be the stronger effect, the desire to get out and vote against Trump, or the desire to just stay home and be lazy.
Well, we've got some updated numbers coming in. I'll go ahead and flip this over to start it with the Democrats first and just get your guys' take on that, because they've now got that uncommitted vote's growing, at least by a percentage anyway. Now, again, it's only 5%. It's still coming in. It's still early. And yeah, Biden, you would expect, has got this commanding lead. The second they close the polls at 9:00 Eastern, they're going to call it for him the same way they're going to do it for Trump. But that uncommitted percentage, that's getting bigger.
Because if you take the number you said that voted uncommitted in the previous elections, they're trying to get 10,000. They're going to get more than 10,000.
Hang on, let me throw that back up here and see if I can just enlarge that just a hair for everybody's benefit. Yeah, in 2020, on the Dem side, they had 19,000 uncommitted. In 16, they got 22,000. In 2012, they got 21. Now, 2008 is a little bit of a misnomer because Obama was not on the ballot in Michigan, and I forget the circumstances as to why that was, but it's not unusual to get an average of at least 20,000 on the uncommitted side.
Right.
If they get that or more tonight, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. It really will. And to go back and look at it, yeah, they've got 5% in, and they're already at 6,000.
But if Biden was on the ballot in 2020, if he is eclipsed by double that number, I think it was 19K. If they got,
let me go back to it. Yeah, it's 19,000.
So if it's 13, anything above that, that's a loss for him on the uncommitted side.
I would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
And in turn, if let's be fair, if Trump, if a non-committed, there's no non-committed basically. If it's about 28,000, then yeah, that's gonna be bad. But no.
Yeah, and then on the Republican side, I don't know, fellas. It looks like it's going to go right down the wire between Haley and Trump. This could be a nail biter all night long. I don't know about you, fellas.
Declare some sort of victory at the end of the night, and it.
I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge of my seat here. I'm just a Twitter with anticipation.
I was saying that earlier. I was like, no matter what happens, Nikki Haley is going to declare victory.
Oh, well, yeah,
but again, Trump should say something at the top of the hour. Again,
because
Haley is going to do it again.
A small portion of the voter base. We are a big part of the voter base, and we're not going anywhere. That's what she's going to say.
Yeah, and before you got in here, I was running a tweet by the pollster that I follow, Richard Barris, who ran precinct level numbers and came to the conclusion that if you're just talking about, if you take out Dems who behaviorally normally vote, and you take out all the activism that the Democrats did in South Carolina, the real number would have been 75-25 for Trump. She could barely have mustered 25% of the Republican vote. And to me, that's a fascinating situation. Well, I mean, not surprising, but I mean, she's basically committing a fraud. But I get the why. She's got to at this point. It's the only way to keep the campaign going.
I heard that she spent over $77 million so far and hasn't lost every primary.
Yeah. Yeah. That number's probably about right.
Other people's money. Who cares, right? It's not hers.
That's worse when a Hollywood bomb. Just kidding.
Well, the Koch brothers pulled their support after the South Carolina disaster.
Yeah.
I sent that to Brian the other day, that headline.
I saw it. Yeah, it was the choice of wording that I found to be ironic. Koch brothers pull out on Nikki. And I'm like, just fellas. Could you have found a better way to say that guy? Really? I mean,
well, it is her style.
Look, I am not going to commit to untoward or tawdry commentary about a politician. Lord knows they can do that enough for themselves. But anyway, one of the other fascinating things, and I'd like to get your guys' take on this, and I know that Christian's already talked about this, is that Biden was floating the idea of the framework of a ceasefire in Israel and Hamas. I think it was yesterday's the earliest he dropped it. Well, I don't know if you guys saw this from ABC News, but I came across it earlier today. I'll just go over it real quick. This is from ABC News. about 1:30, Netanyahu, quote, surprised by Biden's remarks on potential ceasefire deal, sources say. Senior Israeli political source told ABC News that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was surprised by Joe Biden's remarks that he was hopeful a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas could be in place by next Monday. Netanyahu said in a statement later on Tuesday, quote, since the beginning of the war, I've been leading a political campaign whose purpose is to curb the pressures intended to end the war before its time, and on the other hand, also gain support for Israel. We have significant successes in this area because today the Harvard-Harris survey is published in the United States shows that 82% of the American public supports Israel. This gives us two more strength to continue the campaign till victory. And then earlier in the day, Qatar says no breakthrough in talks between Israel and Hamas, which sort of begs the question, is Joe talking out both sides of his mouth here, or did he actually have a peace deal or the framework of one in place? So I throw it out to the group.
I think he can't keep straight what's supposed to be confidential and what's supposed to be said to the public. So what's the actual truth? I don't know, because a lot of information is coming our way, and I don't know what we hear we're supposed to hear and what's supposed to be kept confidential. The good news is neither does Joe Biden. So I don't know if we're being lied to in any sense, because I feel like that requires intent to some degree, and he is no longer capable of that. So I think it's very likely that I think it's probable that he was just recently having peace talk deals, and the framework was laid out in front of him, and he couldn't remember which details were okay to say to the public and which details were supposed to be kept hush hush. Mm-hmm. But we don't know which details we were supposed to hear and which ones we weren't either. So it's all a bit of a mess now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw this over to Christian next, but I want to throw this in first. The fact that this gets announced the day before the Michigan primary, I am very suspicious of this, because, wow, the very thing that people inside the Democrat Party have been wanting from the president, now all of a sudden he's able to announce, hey, we may have a peace deal worked out in a week. I just, it goes back to my old question about the nursery rhyme. Humpty was sat on a wall and Humpty had a great fall. Who's pushing Humpty and what's in it for them? And that's what this feels like. What's in it for Biden? Democrat votes. What's he pushing? Peace deal. So, Christian, I'll throw it over to you. What do you think?
Well, I think a few things. First, Biden announced this so-called weekend peace deal at an ice cream shop with a vanilla ice cream cone in his hand. So that should say something. No, he did. And so normally when you announce something of this level of significance, you would do so in a room or surrounded by things that kind of also convey a sense of importance. He did it over ice cream. So I don't know what to make of that. Personally, a lot of people like to speculate over Biden's cognitive health. I'm not someone who does that, just because I don't think it's interesting. What I think is interesting is how he is acting just in general, compared to how he acted a few years ago when he was vice president, when he still had, by the way, just as many gaffes, when he still had, by the way, just as many embarrassments. The only thing that's different right now is that he's actually president. So what's actually interesting to me is that he's just treating this whole thing like it's cavalier, as if he has no care in the world. And it's not because he's stupid or he's not all there. I think it's just because he just doesn't respect the significance of a lot of these things. He doesn't respect the gravity of a lot of these things. Now, why doesn't he? I don't know. But it appears to me, this is not just the only instances of this. Look at what happened a week or so ago with a press conference he did after the report came out about him, the Inspector General's report came out about him. Yeah. He went to counter the idea that he had significant cognitive disability. So he went out there He screamed at the press, and he insulted the inspector general. It obviously didn't help him very much, but did he care? Most other presidents, especially most of the presidents in an election season, would not have come anywhere close to that kind of podium in that manner. They would have had fully prepared remarks. They would have been polished. So I think that saying that Biden's mentally ill or he's cognitively deficient, therefore he does these things, is a cop-out, quite frankly, and it's very simplistic. What seems to me to be the better answer is that he just seems not to care very much anymore. And maybe people in that caste society have never really cared very much at all. They've rather cared for keeping up appearances. And for a while, Biden had kept up appearances. For the first, I think, year or two of his administration, the entire theme was America's back in the world. The entire theme was we're going to revive our economy. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. And now, in the last year of his presidency, potentially the last year of any Biden presidency, depending on how the election goes, he's just acting careless, fully and totally careless. So take that what you will, but it goes beyond a mental deficiency. I think this is deliberate, personally.
You might very well be right. And
contrarian, but still, I think it's deliberate.
No. I mean, look, anybody is free to give their opinion here. I mean, not a problem at all. I mean, there's always been a great debate about how much of what's going on with Biden is actual cognitive decline and how much of it is him putting on for the purposes of, putting one over on everybody. But, the point about him announcing this thing over ice cream, I hadn't thought about it, but you got a perfectly valid point. And that is, you normally announce this sort of thing in the East Room of the White House, the Rose Garden, someplace where, it takes on a presidential tone. They always talk about the norms and what have you. And then, but him just like eating ice cream and, oh, by the way, I think we got a peace deal worked out on Israel Hamas. That's a good point, because I had not stopped to consider that yet. And as Reuben's coming back in, and I'll add him back in the stage because it looks like his internet took a dive on him. Since we're getting near the bottom of the hour, I'm going to go ahead and just throw these up on screen because we've got more numbers coming in. And I do this in part, not so much with excitement on the Republican side per se, but I'll start from there to kind of tease what's coming next. About 7% is in, as you're expecting. Trump is, winning quite significantly, and yet it's still very, very early. But the number that is the most surprising to me, and we've been talking about it already, is on the Democrat side. And gentlemen, at almost 8:30 p.m. Eastern, with 8% of the vote in, that goal of getting 10,000 in uncommitted, they've already crossed over. And Biden's now under 80. Now, how long he stays under 80, who knows? I mean, obviously he's going to win. I understand that. But I, ladies and gentlemen, I point out this number. I mean, if truly Democrats in Michigan are trying to send him a message, and it's early, it's only 8% of the vote, so I get it. They're sending him a message. This is going to get bigger. The only question is how high it goes. Now, you can make the argument, and I think Christian makes a valid point. Biden's almost to the point, he's so cavalier about everything, he just doesn't, give a damn anymore. But yeah, this is getting interesting. So, and let me say hello to some folks in chat. Alma, sounds like you've got to run, and glad you were here. To answer your question, ma'am, Trump's leading and so's Biden. But it's some of that non-Biden vote that's getting real interesting. So, and I think, okay. Oh, Reuben, I just saw your message, brother. Be safe and be careful. Do what you got to do. We get it. But yeah, this is getting interesting so far. It's getting real interesting. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, they've been trying for like 2 or 3 weeks to get this message out to Muslim Americans, Palestinian Americans living in Michigan, and it looks like it's paying off so far. It really is. So we'll keep an eye on it every little bit to see what the number updates to. But yeah, It's going to be interesting. It's really going to be interesting throughout the night. But
in the
anyway.
interest of throwing out wild, baseless conspiracy theories,
go right ahead.
What if whenever Biden made some sort of announcement or took questions from the press while eating ice cream, what if the flavor of ice cream had some sort of hidden meaning? Like, oh, it's mint chocolate chip. That means that, he's kind of telling the truth, kind of not telling the truth. Or, oh, raspberry swirl. That means it's a flat out lie. He means the opposite of what he's actually saying, but he can't admit that. Now, unfortunately, I think he always gets chocolate chip, so that doesn't really work. But,
crazier things have been done in terms of presidential messaging. So who knows?
I'm firmly convinced Joe Biden is a sociopath or a psychopath who has sexually abused children in the past. So I wouldn't pass anything. I would not put anything past him, including this, Kaiser Soze-esque ability to put on as if he is a senile, bumbling old man. And it worked. Robert Hur said that he would not pursue legal charges against Biden in the documents case because he would come across as a senile, bumbling old man who had troubles with his memory. So it effectively, if it is an act, it's an effective act for legal purposes. And if it's not, it's elder abuse that they're exploiting the guy's senility in order to use him as a avatar for their criminal behavior.
True. I'd want to say it looks like we have someone here who has a birthday tonight. So
happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Alma.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Don't worry, we're not going to sing. I don't. These gentlemen can probably sing better than I can, but there's no sense in taking a risk of blowing out your and everyone else's eardrums trying to do the old happy birthday. So we'll spare everyone that indignity. So there you go. See, if you're just joining us, my name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Tonight we're joined by Brently from the Dangerous Rhetoric Podcast, the inestimable Mr. Christian Watson, the man of the plains, Chad Manley, and my good buddy Reuben Christopher Haynes, who is having in and out internet trouble, but he is with us in body and spirit for as long as the tornadoes do not get him around Chicago. So there you go. And we're just waiting for some of the numbers to come in. Like I mentioned earlier, Michigan is like Florida in that it's on 2 time zones. The overwhelming majority of Michigan is Eastern Standard, but the Upper Peninsula is on Central. So it's been commonly agreed to by everybody that no call of the race will be made until the polls close 9 p.m. Eastern on the Upper Peninsula. And then at that point, it's probably going to be instantaneous. Just for the grins and giggles of it, we did this the other night for South Carolina. So I'll just throw it around the horn. We did a thing on time of call and percentage margin of victory. So Christian, since you weren't here, we'll just throw it to you first. If you want to throw a prediction on that, it's entirely up to you. And if not, that's perfectly fine too.
I'm guessing the percentage of victory for Trump will maybe over 30%. I don't know.
Okay.
Let's go with over 30. That kind of saves me in case I'm not exact.
Okay.
I think we all know when they're going to call it, though. They're going to call it around 9 Eastern Standard Time. So.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, Brently, I'll throw it to you, sir.
They're going to call it as early as possible. So I agree with Christian, and they're going to call it shortly after 9. And, it looks like Trump's beating her by like 30 points now, whereas South Carolina, it was like 20-ish points margin. So she's just getting trounced again and again and again. And it's like a humiliation ritual, and it's pathetic. And I'm offended that we're all being subjected to it as if it's a legitimate part of the contest. This is just so typical of our establishment to just hoist these ingenuous shenanigan type, soulless candidates like Nikki Haley upon us and just use them as a vessel to attack Trump and his supporters, by proxy.
Yep.
And that's what just drives me nuts. Like, it's just, we're expected to actually like consider her as and then she goes around attacking Trump as if he's an ingenuine or otherwise, she says the support for him is a mirage. And I'm just like, honey, you're just confessing by projection there. Like, nobody likes you except for the people that don't like Trump. Like, it's just stupid.
Agreed. Chad, I'll throw it to you.
I will say 33-point lead for Trump, and they will call it 7 minutes after the polls close.
All right. Reuben?
5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5. So what? 7 minutes abs. 5 minute abs. Just kidding. And oh my gosh, I'll say 30%.
Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to go with Christian and Brently on the 9 p.m. call. I'm saying 45% for Trump. I'm feeling lucky tonight. What can I say? Point me to the nearest casino. Give me a couple of dice. Let me start rolling craps here. I'm feeling good. So from the commander, thank you for the super chat. Genuinely appreciate it. In Washita County, where the University of Michigan Ann Arbor's at, the Democrat results. Ooh, that's interesting. The Democrat results have 25% of their vote for uncommitted. Okay, I could see that being the case. That's University of Michigan. And I'd be fascinated to see what's going on up at Lansing, where Michigan State University is at. Thank you for passing that along. I genuinely appreciate that. As I've said, if there are folks in the audience who are native to the state of Michigan and you've got anecdotal stories, things you're hearing, things that people are passing on to you, tweets, whatever, please put them in here. We'd love to talk about it. This is going to be a very interesting result. I'm looking see if there's any real updated numbers at this point. No, I'll wait till the quarter of the hour before I start putting anything in there. But if what Commander's reporting is true, that there's like 25% of their vote in Washita County, where University of Michigan's at, uncommitted, that number's going to get big. And Ms. Gypsy, who is a native of Michigan, she said this in chat before on various occasions, so I don't mind repeating that. Michigan State is just as liberal as U of M, and that uncommitted number is going to get real big before it's all said and done, real big. So, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting night. So, like I say, I'm going to wait till the quarter of the hour before I start updating numbers, but should be very, very interesting. So, on other news, Nikki Haley, and I want to get back to something Brent was mentioning a minute ago, that it's almost insulting. Well, no, not almost. It is insulting that Nikki Haley is trying to foist herself upon the voting public as though this is still a serious campaign and she's got, some hope of winning this thing. Now I've said
I'll tell you what her hope is. Her hope is that Trump gets taken out either by legal shenanigans or he's assassinated. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'd say that's not, well, let us hope that she's not.
But never but I go with Rand Paul, never Nikki.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If voters choose to vote for whoever they vote for, I might disagree with them, but I'm not gonna disparage them, and I'm not gonna, whatever. But the idea that she's running a serious campaign anymore, she can't even get 25% of her own vote in her own home state. I mean, the only reason that she showed almost 40% is because Democrats crossed over. And, and I know that Christians talked about this on more than one occasion, is that, we are reaching a very interesting ideological inflection point with this election, is that a lot of ideas that have been percolating under the surface the idea of nationalism versus globalism, the idea of trying to take care of our own people before we start worrying about everybody else in the world, more broadly speaking, these things are starting to come to the fore. And with all due respect to, Ambassador Haley, she's been a strong proponent of, military involvement of the U.S. around various places in the world, whether or not that's in the direct national security interest of the nation or not. And it's reaching the point that the base of the Republican Party either, well, I won't say because of Trump, I will just say he has been a focal point for that argument. But it's reaching the point where no one's buying it anymore. And you've got an entire generation of Republican politicians that can't figure out how to navigate this. They don't know. I mean, it was just to go back, and I'll get your guys' take on this. Go back to 2022. You had guys like Kevin McCarthy and other Republican politicians who just did not know how to communicate with, what's broadly called the America First MAGA movement. They'd try and mouth the language, but it's just the disconnect was so obvious because it just felt like a shotgun wedding of awkwardness. So, I mean, and no offense, just she's not going to win this thing because what she's selling, no one's buying. But, I'll get your guys' take on it.
Yeah, well, I'll say this about Haley, because I've watched a few of her speeches, because I think that we should all experience the undiluted claims of a candidate for ourselves, rather than just good processing through our favorite influencers. So I tend to watch speeches for all the candidates, even those that are not well known. And so I watched Haley's, one of her speeches, where she was trying to talk about why she supports, why as an American I should support Ukraine with my money. And it kind of showed me that everyone that says that the conspiracy theorists have been right are looking at things in a very narrow way, because Haley is one of the biggest conspiracy theorists on the issue of Russia and America. Like, she literally sat in New Hampshire one time and said that Putin wanted the October 7th attacks to happen because they were near his birthday, and that meant this and this meant that. So I'm like, okay, this is the kind of thinking that people on the right have told me for a long time will save us and defeat the deep state. And yet you have someone who obviously is a part of that faction using this kind of thinking to a bunch of ballasts who don't even understand it to build a specious case for U.S. military involvement in a nation, a case that has no legs to stand on. So that kind of occurred to me, because she's done this on more than one occasion. She talked about how Putin wants to invade Poland and so on and so forth, despite him saying that's not his ambition, despite it being on the record that's not his ambition. But she is a top-tier conspiracy theorist in the establishment sense. But no one seems to recognize that. People don't really seem to hone in on that. She's not making an actual argument born of reason. She's making a bunch of assumptions born of this narrative that she crafted in her mind before she went up to speak. And that's another thing about Haley. The way that she is as a candidate, she's not a spontaneous candidate. She's a candidate. She's not spontaneous whatsoever. She's not even particularly, what's the word for it? She's not even a particularly dynamic candidate. She's very static. She has like one or two like personalities she leans in sometimes. And that's about it, which is why when she's asked about the Civil War, she struggles. Not because she's stupid. Evidently, if you're going to be in politics in America, you have to have some degree of intelligence, even if you're not book smart. She has intelligence. She's not stupid. It's because it's not in the constellation of things she talks about all the time. So maybe we can look at Haley and say, hey, maybe we should reject conspiratorial thinking on both the left and the right and go towards something different that the globalists can't co-opt. Because they've co-opted conspiracy theories. They've co-opted it all. They've co-opted it because the entire Western propaganda against Putin is built on a conspiracy theory that he wants to take over the West and he wants to impose Alexander Dugin's philosophy upon all European nations by force. I mean, so I think that that's a flaw they've been able to use, right, in our thinking. It's because, the idea of controlled opposition? Well, how about controlled thinking? That's one of the flaws they've been able to use. People think that they're enlightened because they have been able to see through the lies. But what if that same exact thinking is used against you by the system? What they can't use is a undiluted adherence to fact and an application of reason to no end. They can't use that. But the moment you go to speculation, they can use speculation for their own benefit. And Nikki Haley has been proficient at using speculation to advocate for the deaths of American men and women under the banner of virtue, which is just something we should look at, in my opinion.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
no. Well, I'll not slightly disagree, but I'll agree, but I'll say it in a different way. She's not a conspiracy theory. She's a neocon. She believes in the war machine, the war effort, contracting, the whole idea that it goes as far as back as the UN was created, with the war in Korea, Vietnam War, and all the wars since. And especially the idea that the Soviet Union is the enemy. That whole thing, that the Cold War is that neocon dream, that conspiracy that Russia's the enemy. The Soviet Union will destroy us. Communism will destroy us. And he's using that same playbook, and it's outdated. It's done. Putin only wants one thing. He wants to make Russia great again. He is the Russian version of Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants to make America great again. That's my opinion. I really think that and again, I watched Tucker Carlson's interview with him. I've seen what Putin has done, what he has stated, even back when he was talking with Clinton back at, it was like 98, the idea that he just wants to have that buffer, and Ukraine has always been part of Russia. And then when they said, well, no, we're going to have NATO, we're going to take over, we're going to do this. The European Union director, someone came out recently and says that we're going to have NATO is going to be there. Nord Stream pipeline, all the different things, because it's sanctions against Russia. It's that whole mentality of they're the bad guy. Let's go after. If you don't support Ukraine, you're part of it's. Again, conspiracy theory that way, yes. But again, it's more of this military-industrial complex. We have to fight evil, and the evil is Putin, and Trump's a Russian plant. In her opinion, the whole dossier everything that has been manufactured. Not only conspiracy theory, but conspiracy documents, conspiracy in the narrative of the news, everything comes up. Like the one thing that when Trump released his tennis shoes, and they were basically saying that a Russian oligarch bought them to basically tie Russia to Trump, to tie Tucker to Trump, to tie what did Nikki Haley said that Trump's a puppet, saying this Tucker Carlson. Like you said, the whole October 7th attack to celebrate Putin, that delusion is manufactured to have us Americans believe this crap. And I'm done with it. They caused the Vietnam War. They killed a lot of good American people back. And that's, again, those people that died for a pointless war in Vietnam would be in control right now. Yet those people weren't there. They're gone. And now we have the losers that are the boomers that are holding on to, they have nothing to lose. They're dying. They're going to die off. And their children, like Soros's kid, who is now hooked up with the Wiener's wife. It's crazy. It's all a cabal of just insanity that wants to destroy the planet in every way necessary. And it's crazy. But yeah, I do agree with you in that regard. But Haley is just a puppet of the globalists in that regard. Spouting their conspiracy theories.
Let me jump in real quick just to give a quick update as far as numbers are concerned. This is on the Democrat side, and this is with about 10% reporting at this point. Again, Joe Biden obviously has a large commanding lead. But again, the thing we're focusing on this evening is the question of this uncommitted vote effort on the part of Muslim Americans in Michigan, and they're already up to like 16,000 on average. Just by way of reminder for anybody who's looking at historical numbers, that's not too far off the pace. As a matter of fact, they're probably going to exceed that tonight, because if you take the last three elections, you're talking an average of 20,000 and a half. And they're already sitting on 16,000 and 10% of the votes in. So this is going to get bigger as the night rolls along.
If you take that number the way it is, it could be 160,000 votes
theoretically, and that would be
that's disastrous. That's disastrous.
That's absolutely disastrous. And because the margin of victory in 2020 in Michigan wasn't that much, I'd have to look it up real fast, and I will momentarily. But on the Republican side, Donald Trump obviously is running away with this thing. And like I said, it will not be called at a minimum for another 10 minutes. So,
Right.
because we're almost to the top of the hour now. But yeah, we're keeping an eye on that Democrat vote, because that's absolutely fascinating. But to go back to something the Christian said a minute ago, talking about Nikki Haley, she's not a particularly dynamic candidate. I mean, we were Chad, you weren't here for Christian, but Chad was doing his best Nikki Haley impersonation Saturday night. And it was almost spot on as far as like speaking style. I mean, yeah, I'm somewhat being tongue in cheek with this, and he's laughing about it, but it was almost like, chat AI had been vocalized. It was just very robotic. It was stiff. It was
she sounded like the character from Family Guy, Trisha Takanawa. And for a little behind the scenes, she's the Asian reporter on Family Guy.
I haven't watched Family Guy since I was like 7.
Okay, yeah. They'll say like, now we go to Asian reporter Trisha Takanawa for out in the field, and she's like, Diane, I'm standing here on the sidewalk next to people who are waiting in line to vote. It's like very, very robotic, and the voice actress, Alex Borstein, who does the voice of Lois on Family Guy, she said that she invented that character just as a way of poking fun at the television news reporters' cadence and how they all kind of speak the same way. And so she just like exaggerated that to a comedic extent to create this character. But that's how Nikki Haley talks. It's just like completing each phrase and then just enough of a beat between each phrase. You kind of wonder if she had to generate the next phrase, the next clause of the sentence before she could speak it. It's like she's writing it's like the teleprompter's generating the speech in front of her. And so she gets to the bottom and she has to wait for it to load the next few words.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, I mean, even beyond just the robotic speech and the canned language and everything else, and again, people can vote for whomever they wish. I'm not going to disparage your choice, but there's nothing compelling about a Nikki Haley campaign that makes, or at least someone like me, want to vote for her, because to me, she's recycled Mitt Romney. She's recycled John McCain. She's recycled Mitch McConnell. It's the same, if I may say, Cold War thinking when it comes to Russia, and not 80s, 90s conservatism that frankly does not meet the times in which we find ourselves. You've got a government that's spending itself into oblivion, trying to give away every strength we've got to countries that are not our own. And it's like, when does this madness stop until we, the American people, take back some control of our government? And if a presidential election, it's not going to be the cure, but at least it's a step in the right direction. So,
let me get into that a little bit. Because there's been a lot of talk on the right most recently about the 80s and 90s version of conservatism. There's been a lot of people. Charlie Kirk's been really criticizing Reagan. Vivek Ramaswamy always says that the dog in the quiet past, uses that old Lincoln quote to discuss Reagan as well. I find these criticisms very interesting because they reflect, more than they reflect anything substantive on the part of Reagan's record, they reflect the fatigue that so many people on the right have with the deification of Reagan. That's really what they're addressing. Because if you look at Reagan as a man, not as a god, but as a man who had flaws and merits, he was a mixed bag. But rhetorically, Reagan was as pure American as you can get, rhetorically. Rhetorically, he was someone who not only understood the values of America, but he was able to go into the arena with people like Buckley and articulate those values in a way that even the most educated people would have to say he had a silver tongue. Even though Reagan was not the most rigorously educated person in the world. He was oftentimes seen as a commoner. I'm sure you remember that, Brian. Oftentimes seen as a commoner by a lot of people, but he still had the ability to articulate a vision. He was a storyteller. That's where his strength was. Policy-wise, he set out to do a bunch of things that ultimately didn't happen. He set the foundation for the national debt to be as big as it is, primarily because he was trying to run propaganda and military campaigns around the world against the Soviet Union. He did a lot of things that ultimately were not physically wise, but in the context of that rhetoric, in the context of that vision, these things made sense. And if you're going to capture the imaginations of people, you're not going to do so strictly through policy or strictly through substance. If Americans judged their favorite presidents off the basis of the substance they had, Grover Cleveland would be the favorite president of most Americans. It'd be Grover Cleveland, it'd be Thomas Jefferson, it'd be a bunch of people that are not talked about very much, at least not in a substantive way. But instead, for a lot of people, it's someone like FDR, right? Or someone like Ronald Reagan. Because both of those men, even though they were very different, captured the imaginations of Americans. But having said that, even Reagan, as much of a soft war hawk he was, talked to the Soviet Union. He did deals with Russia. He cooperated. What we're seeing from Hillary Clinton represents the left-wing part of the war hawk wing. And what we're seeing from Nikki Haley is not even a desire to talk to Russia. It's a bloodlust to destroy Russia and anyone else who's not like them. So I want to give Reagan some credit. I want to give Thatcher some credit. Both of those two leaders actually talked to our enemies. Reagan, I forgot which prime minister it was. Which primer it was of Russia, but Reagan sat down with him, and their teams went over what would happen. Their teams went over what would happen if one retaliated a nuclear strike, and both of them vowed not to respond if the other launched a nuclear attack because they wanted to preserve humanity. You wouldn't get that today. You wouldn't have that today. So I personally, Brian, I prefer the 80s conservatism over what we have with some of these war hawks. I would have preferred the 80s kind of way of dealing with Russia over what Bush did into the 2000s. I would have preferred the 80s because it was, at least we talked to Russia. Yeah, we were antagonizing them. They were the evil empire, but we talked to them. Nikki Haley does not want to talk to us. She wants to kill and destroy. So
well, and I mean, we've all, some of us here are old enough to remember when the red phone was sitting on the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, and everybody's heard the stories that if a certain situation or a hot spot came up in the world, then, somebody was on the phone to the other person, and through a translator, Kennedy's talking to Khrushchev, or, Nixon's talking to Brezhnev, Reagan's talking to Gorbachev, at least they're on the phone talking to each other. Could anybody, not that anybody's taking any pictures inside the Oval Office currently, but can anybody imagine the possibility of a red phone being on Biden's desk right now that would go straight to Putin?
According to Putin, he hasn't heard from Biden. According to Putin, he hasn't heard from Biden in over like a year or so. According to Putin, so this modern day of war hawk is so ruthless. I'm convinced if Hillary Clinton had gotten presidency, she would have imposed a no-fly zone over Syria, and we would have had World War III a few years ago. Yeah. That's how ruthless this is. That's how ruthless this new version of war hawk is. So, man, I don't know, because I think I wasn't alive then, but from what I've read, I think the leadership in the 80s, yes, it was still hawkish, but it seemed to be more level-headed. Because
go ahead.
Behind the specter of that was also the specter of nuclear annihilation as well. Now, having said that, I think America still funded a lot of insurgencies around the world. We still propped up dictators that other regimes would eventually tear down. So we still did a bunch of terrible, illegal stuff. The Iran-Contra thing was absolutely disgraceful, and Oliver North and all that kind of shit, absolutely disgraceful. So I don't mean to rehabilitate it. But I think that era actually kind of started a lot of the problems that we have today.
No, I'll agree with that. And to go to your point, because Reuben and I are probably old enough that can speak to some of this. Those men that were there in leadership on both sides came out of the World War II generation and the Cold War era. They were foreign policy realists. Now, don't get me wrong; there were neoconservatives even back then on an intellectual level that were starting to work their way into the mechanisms of government in the United States. But by and large, you had guys like Cap Weinberger, George Shultz, Don Regan, and others who were there for Reagan. And, they came out of that generation. They'd served in war. They knew the horrors thereof. They didn't want to see people die. They especially didn't want nuclear war. And yeah, they would, stand strong for the U.S. And on the Soviet side, they'd stand strong for the USSR. But by the same token, did they really want to start pushing buttons and start launching nukes? Of course not. That's why they were still willing at some level to talk to and say, look, we both have the capability to wipe each other out. Before this ever gets to that point, let's sit down, let's talk about this. Now, was one side trying to get one up on the other? Of course they were. But on the other hand, at least they're willing to go to the table and say, look, we don't agree with each other on everything, but on this, let's find some kind of common ground. And before we go any further, I want to point out another super chat that's come in. 5 counties to watch: Ottawa, which is Grand Valley State University in Michigan; Washington, which is University of Michigan in Ann Arbor; Genesee, which is University of Michigan Flint; Ingram, which is Michigan State University; and finally Wayne County in Michigan. And it's now 9:00, and as predicted, the races have been called. And with 11% of the vote in, Biden has won, kind of expected. The uncommitted vote is now up above 17,000. Now, to go to Reuben's point, if you extrapolate that out, if that pace keeps up for the rest of the night, that's going to work out to 170,000 votes. I'll give the audience and the panelists something to consider. I just ran a quick tally on the 2020 results for the state of Michigan. Biden only carried Michigan by 154,000 votes. Now, I'm not saying that whole 170,000 is going to go voting for Trump, but by the same token, if they sit out or vote for somebody else, Trump's going to win Michigan. And here's another consideration. We're all focusing on this uncommitted. If you take the rest of the numbers for Phillips and Williamson, that's 18.7, 2.6. Let me do some fast math because I don't have a calculator in front of me. That's like 21% of the vote. That 21% of the vote that's not going to Biden. This is not good. I don't care what anybody in the mainstream media tries to spin this. He got big problems. And now it's finally showing up. There's just no way of getting around it. On the Republican side, yep, race has been called. Trump's obviously going to win. No big deal there. But yeah, on this side of it, this is where the game's getting interesting. At least I think so anyway. So I'll throw it to you guys for your thoughts. Anybody wants to jump in on this?
He fucked.
What?
Yeah.
What county? Sorry, go on.
This is bad news for Biden. And I don't really know what else to say beyond that. Before we just sort of get into reading tea leaves, but here's the thing regarding the uncommitted vote.
Okay.
Are those people still going to just vote for Biden in November?
I don't know.
What percentage of those people are just going to say, all right, fine, I hate him, but I'm not voting for Trump? And what percentage of those people are just going to stay home? I'm not convinced they're going to stay home because they turned out tonight to send a message. So maybe they do a write-in in November.
The Green Party exists.
Yeah, see, that's just
it.
it.
Maybe they vote third party. Who knows? But they voted in the Democratic primary, so they're probably not going to vote for Trump. And they were committed to sending a message enough to go out and cast a ballot for uncommitted in a primary, by the way. So these are people who are most definitely going to vote in November, almost certainly. And they're almost certainly going to vote Democrat or third party. I am curious what the breakdown is of those voters between holding their nose and pulling punching the vote for Biden and going third party or write-in.
I want to throw something into the mix on this, and I just popped out to Real Clear Politics just to pull this up. And this is Michigan head-to-head, Trump against Biden right now, and this is without anybody else in the mix. Okay, these polls just assume it's a two-man race in Michigan. Now, again, I always have a little bit of trouble with the idea of using an average of polls because it works from the assumption that all the polls are equally valid, but at least you get a trend line here. On average, Trump's got already a 5-point lead in Michigan. Now, if I can find it real fast and throwing in like multiple candidates, because that's where it even gets more interesting to me, because let's see. I saw some Michigan polling today. Keep talk amongst yourselves for a second, gentlemen. Give me 1 second.
I just think it's hilarious. Like we called it, they're going to call it for Trump, and it was predictable, but that number of uncommitted is interesting. I don't know if it's going to end up with them necessarily going straight to Biden or not. It really depends on what happens between now and November. If this conflict, gets wrapped up in the next couple of weeks, as all parties hoped, they could all easily just go to Biden because those people won't be complaining about the ceasefire thing. But if its conflict drags on or expands, which is definitely a possibility, and Trump is then seen as the peace candidate, we could actually have a lot of Biden, Bernie type peaceniks voting for Trump.
Well,
and again, like the point was, he was, when Trump was in power, there was not these new wars, and China was not, threatening naval action and threatening to take Taiwan and all this stuff. Also, that's another potential black swan thing that could come up, is China could finally decide to do some military action and take Taiwan, which would again be very bad news for Joe Biden. So across the board, everything looks very, very bad for Biden. And despite all of the legal shenanigans against Trump, he seems to be emerging both at the bench and in PR ahead.
Yeah, and this is what I was looking for a minute ago. This is a multi-candidate ballot. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Let me blow this up so everybody can read it. This assumes it's Trump, Biden, Kennedy, Jill Stein, Cornel West. And again, it depends on which state you're talking about who affects which candidate more, but with RFK Jr., Jill Stein, and Cornel West on the ballot, they're bleeding vote off Biden, and Trump's got a solid lead. I mean, the most recent poll that was done was Emerson, a little tighter, but you see my point. All three of those candidates are bleeding vote off of Joe Biden, and this is very early. We're still in, let's just call it the beginning of March, because really that's where we're at. But they're bleeding vote off Biden, and now you've got the Muslim American community in Michigan who are sending a definitive message tonight that we're not happy with Biden, and be advised, this could happen to you in November. Just saying. I think it's really interesting. I really do.
What I'm remembering is back in 2020, there were a bunch of people who were saying, who were chanting. They made TikToks and videos, but a bunch of college kids who were making videos chanting, "Please don't make me vote for Joe Biden." Perhaps you remember this.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that very well. I was in college at that point.
A bunch of people were like, "Oh my gosh, look at this. Oh my gosh, people don't like Joe Biden. Oh my gosh, he's going to lose, he's going to lose, he's going to lose." And those people still turned out to vote for Joe Biden. So I think in some sense, the attitude within the Biden administration and the Democratic Party is, fuck you, you're still going to vote for us. Even if you hate the candidate, even if this, that, and the other thing, even if inflation, even if bad economy, even if blah, 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 you still vote blue no matter who. So come home, daddy.
Well, make the argument for me. Let's assume that I am a Palestinian American. My family is overseas being bombed. Joe Biden's doing nothing meaningful to stop it. He's just paying lip service. Make the argument to me that I'm going to go and vote for the guy who was responsible for my family dying miserable deaths because of the bombs that are happening over there. Make the argument.
Those weren't the people who were making the chanting videos. The people who were making the
You're right, those college students. Yeah, right.
They were college students.
Right.
American citizens, mostly white college students.
But the uncommitted now are Palestinian Americans, Muslim Americans, largely, that are concerned about the war. So I find it difficult to make that argument to them that, oh yeah, even though your family and your cousins are probably over there getting bombed to hell, you're going to vote for Joe Biden. There are some issues that are just so close to home that politics becomes secondary. So I'm not trying to, you may be totally right. I may be totally wrong, but I think that we can't ignore the emotional element because this is an emotional issue. I have not seen the right wing act the way they have acted over Israel. I have not seen the left act the way they act to this extent. It's gotten on both sides. People have lost their collective minds, and personally, I came in fully in support of Israel. At this point, I support the people of Israel, not the government of Israel, which is where a lot of people on the right are right now. A lot of folks used to be the kind of Nikki Haley, let's give them all money and everything. Now a lot of folks are, hold on, if we're America first about Ukraine, how is Israel any different? Anyway, that's just my thinking.
No, that's a great point. But I think the situation of somebody with family in Palestine who has had their family bombed and attacked and whatever, I think that's an extreme situation that didn't exist in 2020. And I agree, those people probably will not vote for Joe Biden. I don't think they vote for Trump. I think they do right in their third party. But the white liberal college students making the chanting videos, those exact same people 4 years later, they're all in master's programs because academia ad infinitum, ad nauseum, etc. They're still going to vote. They're still going to turn out and vote. They vote blue no matter who. That is literally one of their.
That makes sense.
Vote blue no matter who. And so they'll complain about it. They'll hate themselves for doing it. And they'll be like, fine, I'll do it because the other guy is Trump.
Yeah, but I mean, you might wind up being absolutely right about this, Chad. But I'll counter with one point. Okay. Yeah, they're in master's programs, and yeah, they're being told vote blue no matter who. But that sort of begs the question: which one's putting gasoline in my car, and which one's putting food on my table? Sooner or later, economic rationality has to win out over emotion. Because I mean, and again, Chad, you might wind up being absolutely right come November. If you are, I'll say it and I'll shout it from the rooftop. You were right. But at some point, I mean, even in the Soviet Union, under the most horrifying command control economy ever imagined in the history of the human race, somebody realized, why am I sitting on a tractor plowing the potatoes for all the people, and I get none of the potatoes that I plow? And finally, they all looked at Moscow and went, you guys want to explain this to us? I don't care if you're holding a gun at me or not, and it's going to be the same thing here. To some degree, you're right. There are going to be some young Democrats, they're going to vote Democrat no matter what. But sooner or later, for some of them, economic rationality has got to take over. And if this race comes down to a referendum on the incumbent versus the quasi-incumbent, and it's a comparison of two presidencies, even young voters are going to look at that and go, I remember when the other guy was in, and I didn't have all these problems. So, I mean, I add that one caveat by the way of just food for thought. But
let me counter your counter and say,
go ahead.
A lot of these people have not faced economic reality yet. They are students on student loans provided by the federal government, which, by the way, Biden just forgave how many $1 billion in
About
student
12 billion.
loan. Yeah,
12 billion.
and he's made promises like he said, the Supreme Court tried to stop me and I didn't let them, or something to that effect. And so I think there's an implicit promise of vote for me again and I'll forgive more student loans.
Yeah.
And that is the math that some of these people have to think about, considering that they maybe just started paying off student loans, or they're seeing their student loan balance build as they continue through academia. And they're like, oh man, I'm going to vote for the guy who, is going to try to forgive some of this for me. These are people who have not had to face economic reality.
Yeah, true.
I do wonder, Brian, on your point. Remember that old line from James Carville? It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah, I remember.
I wonder. I grew up watching James Carville. It's actually I have a soft spot for him, even though he's a Democrat. So I have a soft spot.
I love Carville. Carville's one of my favorites.
I have a soft spot for him, but I wonder how much is in the post-Trump era, and I don't know the answer to this. How much of that is true still?
That's the economy.
Yeah, I'm curious. In the post-Trump era,
That's
going
to be the test this November. That really will. And it's the quarter of the hour, so let me do a quick commercial. My name's Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. This is Brently from the Dangerous Rhetoric Podcast. Chad Manley, Christian Watson, Reuben Christopher Haynes. It's the quarter of the hour, so I'll give an update on the numbers. And gentlemen, as predicted, uncommitted's crossed over 20,000, and it's getting bigger. It's almost 15% of the vote in. Again, Biden and Trump have been declared the winner as expected. Not big surprise. But yeah, that uncommitted vote is getting bigger. And just by a quick tally on that I can see, we're talking about almost 22% of Democrats who are not voting for Joe Biden.
Brian, I have a question to ask. So,
go ahead.
Do you have a breakdown by county?
Yeah.
Because again, you can project if the Muslim counties haven't reported in, then we can figure out. Yeah, Dearborn, we can figure out. Oh my God, how much bigger is it going to be? Is it going to be an aggregate of what this is, like 120,000 votes, or even more than that? Because again, the percentages of that area, you have a breakdown now of what it is. So, is uncommitted winning any counties? If it is, then that's bigger news, in my opinion.
Well,
think about it.
Give me just a second here, and I might be able to do something about that.
And vice versa, the same way too. What counties is Haley winning in? And if Haley's winning in popular Democratic counties, and since it's an open primary, then that's a protest vote. So it's essentially a protest vote of both sides. Just to be fair, when you think about it, those people that don't want Biden and are supporting, the not uncommitted, that's a protest vote against Biden. If it's Democratic switching over, it's a protest vote against Trump. So either way, it's a protest vote against the establishment. Either way, in the mind of a normie per se, someone who has not had political gain in it, they only been fed negative news. I would say 99% of the news out there is negative to Trump.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do it this way, because I've got it pulled up. This is Washtenaw County, which is the home of University of Michigan. 50% of the vote is in. Uncommitted's got like 20%. So it's similar what's going on statewide. Let's just do another one real quick, since I've got this pulled up the way it is. Genesee County, which was mentioned earlier, no vote is in yet. So that's University of Michigan at Flint. It's Flint. Ingram County, which is Michigan State University, home of the Spartans, if you're a sports fan, just saying.
Nothing yet.
They don't have any vote in yet. That's kind of interesting. Wayne County, which I believe is Detroit. So give me a second here. They should definitely have numbers in. Yeah, but not that much. That's surprising. That's really surprising, given that's such a metropolitan area. That is Detroit. That is Detroit. So let me see what Grand Rapids, that's Kent County. They've got about 13% for uncommitted. Lansing is Eaton County. That's 11. So yeah, and this is gonna spread out. This is gonna get real interesting. Real interesting. Let me see if I can
I also wonder what the exit polls are saying too. You know, basically those people, if they're strong enough to have the balls to ask the question, if they're uncommitted or not, or if they voted for Haley instead of Trump, because that's basically going to be the narrative for the news cycle tomorrow. It's going to be the fact that they're not going to mention the uncommitted aspect. They're going to basically see that's a protest vote against what's going on in Israel, free Palestine. That's all. That's all they're gonna say that.
They're also going to conclude exactly what Chad did. They're going to be like, they're going to vote Democrat anyway.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, that's probably what they're going to say, but I'm not so sure. I'm really not. And I want to get to this one super chat because bless his heart. Commander says, my dad is libertarian leading independent. He votes uncommitted on the Democrat ballot because he hated Biden more than he likes Trump. Interesting. Oh, well, there you go. He votes uncommitted and he hates Biden.
So speaking of the uncommitted vote, we haven't talked very much about that same vote on the Republican side. The numbers I'm seeing right now, there are 4,208 people, 2.2% uncommitted on the Republican side, which is interesting. Yes, there it is. That's very interesting. So, and plus, that's interesting because Ron DeSantis, Chris Christie, Vivek, Asa Hutchinson, all these people, Ryan Binkley, they're all still on the ballot, and they're getting smaller shares of the vote. So it's interesting that even in the presence of all these other candidates, the uncommitted vote is beating all of them. Beating DeSantis, beating Christie, beating Vivek, beating all of them. What does that say? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you. Very interesting. Yeah. And on the Republican side, obviously, Trump was going to be declared the winner. He's got like a 35-point lead, and it's more than doubled Haley's vote share. So no big surprise there. So, Christian, I'll ask you this question from a prognosticator standpoint, because I put this to the fellas on Saturday. Let's talk Haley for a second. This is now the fifth contest in a row that she has not won.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got money in the bank. She's still got money coming in, although it's now being reduced drastically and will be reduced even more drastically. What do you think the odds are? Not only does she stay into Super Tuesday, but goes on past Super Tuesday for what it's worth. Do you think it happens, or think she's like, no, Super Tuesday's it, I'm done, I give up?
Well, this could go a few ways.
All right.
I watched her full South Carolina defeat speech. It sounded like a victory speech, the way she was dressed and how cheerful she was, but it was a defeat speech.
Okay.
And she kind of baited everyone at first. She baited, and she's like, oh, my mother, all that kind of stuff. Then she came around. Her reasoning for staying is actually more interesting than the fact that she actually stayed. Her reasoning for staying is that we have a long primary to go to do, and people in other states deserve a choice that is not she used the words, a Soviet-style election. You see, that's the old trying to invoke the imagery of the USSR to provoke some kind of moral justification for her continuation in the race, which doesn't, for most people it doesn't work, but it kind of tells you the nature of her kind of politics. But what's interesting about that is that Haley is approaching this from the standpoint of someone who cares about democracy. Now, this is not just me guessing. Haley, when she was confronted by a veteran in New Hampshire, said, the reason I'm in the race is because we are a democracy in America, and I want to fulfill that. So she believes that. She generally believes that we're a democracy, which is unfortunate, but still, accepting her viewpoint. If you believe that America is a democracy, then a minority of people, whether it be people that vote in 2 contests and you drop out, people that vote in 5 contests, but there are 10 contests to go, they don't get to choose what the fate of your candidacy is. The majority gets to choose what the fate of your candidacy is. So when you're looking at it from that kind of idealistic perspective, that can be translated towards a practical goal, like justifying staying in the race, she could stay in this as the RNC, because she can continue to say, what other choice do people have? people should have a choice in America, including when they go to the convention floor and vote for whoever they want to get the nomination. So her reasoning is actually, I think, a window into what she might do. Now, it's also possible that she may say, using the same line of reasoning, that the majority of contests in the primary will have happened by Super Tuesday, which they would have, and the majority would have spoken. Part of me does not think this is going to happen. I would guess, and this is just guesswork, but I think it's guesswork proven right, or proven feasible, rather, by experience. I would guess that she continues to use that this is a democracy and we deserve choices argument to ride out. When's Trump's he has trials after the convention still, but he has trials leading up to the convention too. Like he has another civil trial coming up.
Correct.
I think we're going to see her use that as well as an excuse to stay in towards the convention. If you lose your own home state, by the rules of political wisdom, you're out.
Yeah.
Even Kamala Harris got out before she lost California. No.
Yep.
Not Haley.
Absolutely true.
She's running on a different clock. So I think we're going to see her stay until the convention using that same old "it's democracy" argument. It's going to be that same old tired argument.
And Nova PD over on Rumble says, I believe her and her backers are hoping one of these lawfare suits will put Trump in jail. And yeah, I could very easily see what you're saying. She uses the argument, hey, the voters deserve a choice, but she won't say the quiet part out loud, which is, I'm really hoping that, one of these trials, nabs Trump and then at that point force an open convention, which would be
let's really talk about what would be a Nikki Haley's ideal situation. Would be that somebody in the deep state assassinates Trump. Like that would incredibly benefit her at this point because she has the most delegates. She could argue that, well, since there's nobody else, it's my turn and I'm the best one for the job and people like me. So
I would have believed this a few months ago. I don't believe it. I don't believe it because we are at a point right now in our country where even the slightest hint of impropriety or improperness in a particular political event, J6 is an example, but any other event, causes people to be suspicious and to react in ways that are unpredictable. No one could have really predicted what would have happened on J6. No one could have really predicted what would have happened, over these past few months with some of the things that have come out. So I think that if Donald Trump, God forbid, I don't want this to happen. I pray it doesn't happen. God forbid someone does something to him, even if it seems like it's natural causes, even if it's perfectly explainable, people will not believe it. He could die in the hospital of a flu. People would not believe it. It could be totally innocuous. So even if they made it look like an accident, it just wouldn't seem plausible to people. And you have to have, in politics, you have to have a mandate. You can't just have someone killed, walk into a convention before they were supposed to win by majorities and say, hey, I'm the next option. No, you have no mandate. And at that point, you risk the delegates rebelling or doing something like just completely and utterly rebelling against the RNC or doing something that would cause chaos in the process. And you risk, perhaps, I don't know, the party, like the Democrats do, unilaterally nominating someone, but even then, who would go out and vote for them? No one would. So, and people already think that the political system in America is already illegitimate. They would think it doubly so if that happened. So, if I am the quote-unquote deep state, I'm not touching Trump with a 10-foot pole. What I'm going to do, if I'm the deep state, I'm simply going to try to keep bogging him down with legal stuff, which will probably fail. I'm going to try to influence the results of the election, maybe with sudden color revolutions or riots during the summer that can be blamed on him, which will probably fail. And then if he gets into office, I'm going to do everything in my power via court cases, via congressional obstruction to make him the most lame sitting duck president in the history of presidents, to make him the most watched president in the history of presidents, which could possibly succeed, in all honesty. Depending on how he plays his cards. I wouldn't kill him if I was a deep state because that just makes no sense. It ruins their mandate. It makes the system seem even more illegitimate, and it puts the country in a more precarious state of something entirely destabilizing happening, which does not benefit them in the long run.
But that's what they want. And they also, you got to remember, these people
want power. They want power. That's what they want.
But they're psychopathic. They don't realize that they engender or engineer their own destruction. They're like the virus that infects the cell and fails to realize that as it destroys the cell, it also destroys the environment which allows it to thrive.
For a bunch of psychopaths, they've been pretty effective in capturing all the institutions and engineering policy towards their own ends. Being a psychopath doesn't make you stupid. In fact, psychopaths tend to be quite smart. Look at Jeffrey Dahmer. So I don't know.
That's a big misconception. Psychopaths,
okay, explain it to me.
They appear to be smart because they're highly charismatic and they believe their own bullshit. They don't have an inability to know that they're lying. They don't have an ability to fear their own death. They don't have an ability to forecast an outcome that is not beneficial to them or does not align with their plans. And as soon as that outcome manifests, they just switch it within their head. They don't even see that they've caused their own problem. So this is it's just not gonna turn out well for them. And we are in a more of a mask off moment. Forget 5 minutes ago, there never would have been charges against a leading political candidate. This is a completely new development. We are in uncharted territory politically. And if you think assassinating Trump is off the table, I think it's very much on the table. I think it's actually a high probability, especially as we get closer to the election and things continue to look bad for Joe Biden, which they look terrible for him. And I don't know how they're going to pull it off. They don't have a pandemic. They don't have their lawfare failing every time it turns around. And they're in the PR, well, they suck too. Like one of the things they could do is they could have a cyber attack that disables the internet. Blame Russia, blame China, blame whoever. And then in the miasma, the fog of war, they could easily take out Donald Trump and blame that on, Iranian terrorists. Like there's a number of ways we could get away with this shit. And yes, you don't believe it. I won't believe it. There will be skepticism, but they don't care about us. They don't care about our opinions. And they'll just do whatever they want to do at the end of the day.
Let me counter one question to that.
Mm-hmm.
If Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's insurance policy to make sure that he is not removed, or at least that was his thinking, then why wouldn't a Vivek Ramaswamy or a J.D. Vance or someone like that, even though they're not even at this point running, why wouldn't they be the America First or MAGA movement's insurance policy that, God forbid, if something happened to Trump, okay, yes, the powers that be in the Republican Party, and let's be honest, the mechanics of the party are still controlled by the establishment, but I'm at least willing to give the possibility, if God forbid something did happen to Trump, and she tried to go to the convention with no mandate, by the way, none whatsoever. You're trying to tell me that the powers that be in the Republican Party could hold back that tidal wave of MAGA first, America First MAGA, to the point they couldn't keep someone else? They're somehow going to be able to prevent someone like a Vivek or a J.D. Vance or a Josh Hawley. I mean, the options for the deep state would be worse if Trump were not running, because it's becoming obvious. Haley can't sell it. Christie can't sell it. DeSantis can't sell it. And again, you might be absolutely right. I mean, that's the beauty of this, and I appreciate every perspective that's here. We are five gentlemen gathered together in a place of free speech to espouse our opinion. We'll find history and time will prove one of us to be right. But I'm a little bit on Christian's side on this one. I just can't. Yeah, you're right. They're psychopathic. I don't disagree with that. But even psychopathism, if that's a word, psychopathism sooner or later has got to give
psychopathy or psychopathy.
Psychopathy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm from West Virginia. How do I know how to speak English? Psychopathy sooner or later has got to give weight to reality.
It does. It absolutely. I mean, there are several examples of this. Look at Hillary Clinton, for example. If you want to, I'm not going to diagnose her. People think she's like psychopath or whatever. That woman was the most cunning, calculating, deliberate, planned politician I've seen in my life. I haven't been alive for very long, but I'm sure others will probably attest to it as well. Very calculated. Every word she said hit some kind of note that she needed to hit. Psychopaths tend to have high IQs. So I just, this idea that they're just blind to their own potential destruction, if they were, they wouldn't be doing these court cases. If they were blind to their own destruction, they wouldn't realize that if Trump got into office, he's probably going to prosecute a lot of people that have been involved in wrongdoing over the past few years that has come out and has been proven. But they are aware of their They are aware of their own potential downfall, which is one of the reasons why they're trying to do this. So I just don't think that they are going to set off a powder keg and kill Donald Trump. They can do several other things that might be more effective. Because right now, the court cases, right, obviously there should be an uproar for the judicial system being corrupted by sociological principles as opposed to being guided by constitutional ones. But that uproar is very minor and most folks don't care. They can do something like this and get away with it much more than they can taking a life. That's too messy. There are too many traces. There's too much baggage to that. I don't see it. From their perspective, I just don't see it.
Like I say, we're going to find out one way or the other, because and I don't know how you gentlemen feel about this, but the older I'm getting, the more I feel it. Time's moving faster than people realize. It's now the tail end of February. We are, what is it now? March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, 8 months to the election. And the historical irony is it's on the 5th of November. And if you gentlemen know the English poem that I'm referring to, oh man, that historical irony, when I realized what day the general election fell on, I went, oh, this is a sign from divine providence.
Guy Fawkes, yeah.
It's actually it is really a providence when you think about it. No matter what, if you're religious or not religious, or just historical, it's historical. When you're thinking about, it's a choice between darkness and the light, between free thinking or conformity. You have to understand that people right now, the system is built that people are being pressured to do certain things. Get the jab, stay inside, shelter in place. It's all these phrases have been put through to people. And no, and the people that do say no more, no. Like myself, my entire life I've been that. I've been the outsider. Peer pressure is just conformity. It's the hive mind. I do not like the hive mind. I've never understood people who don't think. People who just, again, if you're people can learn facts and learn things that they're taught in school, but they don't understand what's going on. They understand the fix is in. And I can say that words are correct. Making Trump a martyr is suicide. And they've already done it. They've made him, they've prosecuted him, and that only made him more popular. So making him a martyr is going to make it even worse. They have to do it in a legal fashion. That's why CNN's reporting about, they're downplaying the Fani Willis thing as a conspiracy theory. They're telling us that Trump did cook the books in New York, and people actually believe this shit because again, they have to have the hive mind follow them, because if they continue to push and prod and do these things, it's going to collapse. A perfect example of the hive mind working, and it's frightening, is when the CIA was proven that they had a hand in JFK's assassination, and nobody said anything. 60 Minutes didn't say anything. There was no expose, and you had Laura Logan talking about it today on Congress, and it didn't even make a peep in the news cycle, because people, Biden and the Democratic Party, and even the Republicans, believe the news is, there's no choice in news. It's all like 4 or 5 different, not even that, like three or four different corporations that run everything. And that's how it's done. It's the illusion of choice completely. You don't have a choice. People think it's a prize fight, Democrat, purple, red and blue, and all that stuff. No, it's them and us. And the establishment wants to keep power, and they'll do whatever they can. My concern is, of course, the convention in Chicago and Milwaukee here. I think it's Milwaukee for Republican.
Yeah,
Not sure.
Milwaukee for the Republicans and Chicago for the Democrats. Yeah.
Yeah, again, which is again another irony. It's going to happen again. There'll be riots and all that stuff. It'll be put out there, but again, they're going to tout that as it's MAGA country doing it. It's gonna happen. It's really it's insanity. And you saw the communists going down recently in I don't know what's coming back. New York. It's insane. These people are insane, and yet the poor mentally disturbed guy who killed himself in the Israeli in Washington, it's embassy in Washington D.C. too, and yet Cornel West coming out with his insane, off lunatic reply saying that our brother did this, free Palestine, and it's insane. They're all doing this. It's the hive mind repeating it over again, and they're just doing it. Free thinkers need to stand up, and it's time to do it now.
Well, and that's part of the beauty of what's going on here tonight. In that, I mean, I don't know how much you guys have been paying attention to the chat, but all of you to a man has been complimented for the insight, the observations that you guys are making, and that's the beauty of what's going to happen. You know, whether it's on my channel or your gentlemen's respective channels or whatever on social media you guys are doing, you guys are bringing to the table perspective and insight and voice that people are hungry for. They're hungry for authenticity. They're, even if they don't necessarily agree with you, they want someone to tell them the truth. Tell us what's going on. Don't give us the corporatists BS anymore. And, you know, I still, you know, from very early on, from when I started doing this just last year, I remember very specifically the conversation I had with another content creator who is just absolutely one of my favorite people. And I asked him the question, I said, how much of a threat are guys like you and me to corporate media or to the corporate journalistic system? He said, we are an existential threat. He said, because we can take a very small amount of resources and have just as much or more influence than people who spend multi-millions of dollars in studios in New York City or Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles, California. And he said that is terrifying to them, and they know it's coming and they can't stop it. You know, so
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Yeah. So what we're doing tonight, you know, without trying to, you know, blow up our already overinflated egos any bigger than what they are. Well, me anyway. You guys don't have that problem, but
dude, I'm literally president of all the gays and Satan. Like, come on, I've got the biggest ego of them all.
So are you and the Toad running on a ticket together, or is it just you declared yourself to be the omnipotent despot and you're just like, I don't need a vice president?
Well,
so
since everybody on X takes everything I say so seriously when I have these opinions on, you know, gay marriage and gay rights and whatever, I've just declared myself the president of the gays. So I speak for all gays everywhere, all of you, and you can't, you know, whether you like it or not, I'm doing it. So.
Okay, well, Toad, if you're watching this, I tried to get you in there to help you out, brother, son, but he's not having any of it. So there you go.
No, Toad is like Toad's like Toad. He's a whole nother animal, rather.
That's a good way of putting it. Anyway,
he's like a Texan aggressive gun-toting bottom. Like he's a whole nother type of
Lord
gay.
Wow. Anyway, since it's the quarter of the hour, let me do a real quick commercial. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I am joined tonight by a panel of very sharp, smart, and humble men. My poor attempt at a joke aside. Christian Watson's here, Reuben Christopher Haynes, Brently from the Dangerous Rhetoric Podcast, and author Chad Manley. So just a quick update of numbers as we go around the horn. With 17% of the vote in Michigan, obviously Biden was declared winner, but the uncommitted vote, it's getting bigger. It's already passed. It's almost up to 25,000, and it's just 17% of the vote in. This could be history making. And I know people are sitting out there saying, but it doesn't make any difference. They're going to vote Democrat in November. Maybe, but are we really sure they're going to vote Biden? We don't know yet. That's the $1 million question. On the Republican side, again, no big surprise, but the margin of victory is continuing to spread out for Trump. He's got like a, what is that? 35, maybe 35, 36 point lead. a little under some of the estimates, but still a commanding number, which he's doubled Nikki Haley's vote total. I mentioned a moment ago, again, if I could find it real fast. Oh, rats. I already took it down. But the point being that uncommitted number in past elections was only at best 20,500. Well, they're already blown past that, and it's getting bigger. So this is going to get real interesting before the night is over. And we've got a great crowd on Rumble. We got a great crowd on YouTube. You guys are absolutely fantastic. Thank you for joining us tonight. And yeah, we'll be here next Tuesday night for Super Tuesday. And gentlemen, you obviously have a standing invitation. If you're able to join, would love to have you. If not, I understand completely. But we'll be back next Tuesday night doing this all over again. So, because the days are getting shorter and faster all at the same time. So, yeah, it looks like that effort on the part of the Palestinian community in Michigan, it's paying off big. They're sending their message. Now, like you said, whether the mainstream media even reports on it tonight or not, whole other question. But fortunately, for those of you who have joined us in chat in both places, and actually on Twitter too, you do realize that we are not the mainstream media. Therefore, we're a lot smarter, a lot more observant, and a lot more willing to talk about it. So there you go.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything online. Nikki Haley hasn't talked yet. Trump hasn't talked yet, so no one said anything today. So
okay, well, yeah. If anybody happens to catch the beginning of either one of their speeches, or even Biden for that matter, let me know where it's at. We'll throw it up here on screen and let everybody either hear it, listen to it, or both. You know, last Saturday for some reason I had a little bit of trouble getting the visual feed on Nikki Haley's speech. But yeah, if you guys happen to catch any one of the three of them giving a speech or starting to, let me know. We'll throw it up here and let people listen in on it. So there you go.
I must say something. I must say I am sincerely appreciating Leah's Harry Potter references in the chat. I am a massive Harry Potter fan. Read the books. I've seen all the movies. And actually, Order of the Phoenix is one of my favorites. That duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort in the atrium, like when he's trying to tempt Harry, and then Harry doesn't do it, and then Voldemort comes and tries to kill him, and Dumbledore just apparates in. It's just epic. And it kind of actually, it's a good metaphor too. Because the ministry, I'm going to be nerdy for here a little bit.
Go right ahead.
The ministry of magic, right, in Harry Potter, they were so in denial that Voldemort had returned. They were just so in denial. They're like, no, he's not back. He's not back at all. And people literally had to go outside of the system, outside of the process, because they're over all the magic. They regulate all the magic outside of the process to actually find what the truth was. But even people within the system, like Dumbledore, still didn't agree with what the orthodoxy was saying. And ultimately, by the time the Ministry of Magic had seen Voldemort return physically, like when after he tried to kill Harry by tapping into his emotions, didn't work, and he like vanished when the Ministry came. After that moment, they said, oh my gosh, he's back. But at that time, it was already too late. It was too late. The people that worked outside of the system already knew the truth before they did, and they already tried to act on it to no avail. Unfortunately, Dumbledore still invaded Hogwarts, all that kind of stuff. But the point is this. The point for all that nerdy stuff is this. I see us as the same kind of way. I see all content creators that are honest and not bought off by corporations, not bought off by foul interests, the same type of way. A lot of us tend to be able to see things in our culture and our politics and our world more clearly and more substantively than a lot of people who just listen to the mainstream media do. And that's no accident. But unlike the Ministry of Magic, I think that we are beginning to get in control of the orthodoxy, right? A lot of the influencers on Twitter are not a part of the corporate orthodoxy. They're a part instead of this alternative economy of opinion and thought that's growing, kind of like Dumbledore's army. So I think that unlike the Ministry of Magic, we're actually succeeding. And unlike Dumbledore's army, we're actually succeeding as well. And that's something that's very inspiring, something that's very humbling too. Because people don't realize how much, even if you're a smart channel or a small influencer like I am, or many of us are, you still impact people. You still are on at least one person's daily radar or daily schedule to listen to. You're still influencing somebody's thoughts. And imagine when that person, that one person that you influence, goes to their friend group and talks to them, and then they talk to the next person. Your thoughts can be transmitted just like that. Obviously, on a bigger scale, the transmission is larger. But the point is this. This isn't a game. This is serious. This is real life. It's one of the reasons why, and the people call me a prude for this, I don't troll on social media. I just don't see any reason to. I think this is too serious. I think that where we're at in our country right now is too serious. We got people being manipulated by social media so much so that they let their mental illness just batter them down, and they set themselves on fire in front of the Israeli embassy. That was social media right there. That Free Palestine, a social media hashtag that he uttered. Those were his last words before death, a social media hashtag. If that doesn't tell you how inseparable the internet has become with our real life, I don't know what will. So this is some serious stuff, and I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to take it seriously. All of you guys do. I'm just saying in general. I take it very seriously. I seem stuck up because of it, but because I realize it's life or death for this nation if you're not stuck up. This is how I see it.
If I may geek out for a second,
of course,
you have a fondness for the Harry Potter films and books.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have a fondness for the Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the scene,
Me too.
The scene that is always inspiring to me, and thank God the technology existed 20 years ago to finally bring Tolkien's vision to life. Anytime I get close to any election, I go back to that scene from The Return of the King when the Rohirrim arrive at the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
Yeah.
And that charge down the hill. I have said before, and I'll say it again. I know it's CGI to a certain extent, but on the other hand, that may be the greatest cavalry charge in the history of cinema. And
that was beautiful.
The music that Howard Shore, the composer, put together for that scene and for the whole film, but for that scene in particular, is just amazing. And like I say, I don't know what kind of direction Peter Jackson had to do on that day, because it had to be complicated. That many men, that many horses, that much real equipment. And again, I know that a significant portion of that scene was CGI, but still, greatest cavalry charge in history. And to me, it exemplifies what's coming in November, win or lose.
Yeah, so, Peter Jackson, Christopher Nolan, those are some of the giants of cinema. Just absolutely. You can watch either of their movies, and I come away just edified to know, especially Christopher Nolan. His movies are so difficult to understand. Even as someone who likes philosophy, he puts so much into his movies, you have to kind of pause and think about, what is this character trying to tell me? That's beauty. And that's something that I wish was more exalted in our culture today. Today we have people like Cardi B and Ice Spice talking about all kind of nonsense and all this poppy boppy bullshit. I'm sorry to curse, but still, that's really what it is. That is talking about the same old thing on a loop. Talking about the same old norms on a loop, talking about love and heartbreak, Taylor Swift apparently having political clout. I mean, that's a culture that doesn't actually exalt beauty. That's a culture that that paints ugliness with a veneer of beauty and tries to treat that as if it is beauty. I mean, I think that our culture has better stuff to offer than Taylor Swift, but that's a different rant for a different day, even though it has political implications too. Right? Yep. Because celebrities tend to influence these kind of things. It's so unfortunate, really.
Yeah. And we got an update from the commander. Ann Arbor proper is 32% uncommitted on the Democrat ballot. So, just saying.
Because that's the whole idea.
Anyway,
you had sociologists, the main not mainstream media, but mainstream media to a certain extent, and you also had what's called again academics. Understand something here. Think about it this way. When you guys were, I know when I was 10 years old, but you go back when you were a child, who was your hero? Who inspired you? Okay. And then you think of that person, whoever it is, or movie character or superhero, or was it a historian or whatever, Kids nowadays, who are their heroes? What do they inspire? They've been manipulated. I asked the young person basically, what are you going to do with your life? I want to influence and make money. be an influencer, going make money and be an influencer. But again, but think about here's the terrifying aspect. The most successful communist regime that I know is China, because they do it in a different way. The public-private partnership, where they have the corporations that are run by business people and the party members. But the way it works is you have party members. Again, if you want to be in society, you have to be part of the party. The party, not communist, it's the party. And then if you want to excel, you have to do certain things. They have their computer systems, their phones, everything set up. This is where we get the social credit score from. It's from China. They're doing it. And again, even the New World Order and European Union are doing it, because China's that they're not talking about China, how bad they are. We have to support Taiwan, but then they say, well, we have it there, whatever. It's the least of the conflicts. The main conflict is Russia. I don't know why, but it is. And they're exuding that communism, that nationalism as terrifying. You had in this administration, Christian nationalism is bad. The militias are bad. You had that idiot, I don't know what, some commentator saying that, you know what, it's so weird that American Christians that believe in Trump believe that their rights come from God. How dangerous is that? They do, moron. Inalienable rights. Don't you even read history? But again, that's the whole idea. Yeah. Going back to that child who has no heroes now. My first superhero that I loved. I never read a comic book, but I did enjoy Superman for one reason. He stood for truth, justice, and the American way. And the idea, the epitome of a person who came here from another world, an alien who came here from another world, landed in small town America, and was raised by two loving Americans on a farm in Smallville. And he basically went to the city, and then he basically saw things that were going wrong and stood up. And the original was standing against crime, and then standing against the war effort and Hitler and all that stuff. You saw that happening in bad guys that were doing bad things to America. Because again, he stood for truth. And you saw that, I believe it was in Superman 2, where you had Christopher Reeve at the very end of the movie flying the American flag back to the White House. And that was a moment of rebuilding back from what had happened in that movie. And it's about, that's the whole idea. And it had nothing to do with, right or wrong. It had just that moment of patriotism that he exemplified. Captain America, before everything went screwed up with MCU, it stood for something. Hey, the government is trying to, what is it? The Winter Soldier. Hey, America's trying to control people, mind alter them, and they want to control and they want to assassinate people because of an algorithm. Again, they're doing that now. I know I'm on a list somewhere because of all the things I've said. I've been banned. I was banned on Twitter before it became X. I asked for my account back, got it back, saying the exact same things I'm saying now, but not being banned. We have to stand up. We need to be, how'd you say it? I don't consider myself a hero. I consider myself as a normal person who's not going to fall down the path of what the tyranny's coming here. And that's what the Constitution is built for. A government by the people, for the people, of the people, and not the corporations and not the globalists. This ends now. And I'm doing everything I can. And again, I couldn't walk a year ago. I'm walking now. I'm still a little weak, but I'm still going to stand up. I'm going to fight back. And if I have to do it in pain, I'm still going to do it because I believe in America. I believe in the American people, just like I believe in the Russian people, the Chinese people, the Israelis, the Muslim people. People do not want conflict. They want to be at peace. And these people that are in control right now just want war, bloodshed, and control. And I'm sick and tired of it.
Yeah, and just one thing that you said that was really interesting. You said that a lot of young folk today don't have role models to look up to. I totally agree with you. And I think that if we do it by generation, it becomes even more evident. So I'm Gen Z, right? So when I was growing up in the era where there was still, I think, still decent writing for a lot of good TV shows. There was still like Star Wars, the Clone Wars. There were a lot of superhero shows, Justice League, all that kind of stuff coming out. And I looked up to like I looked up to like Master Yoda from Star Wars. I looked up to a lot of different figures that really inspired something within me. I was a very odd kid. But I think that as I grew up, I realized that in general society, the same people that were told to be my role models that were not fictional were the same people that you guys' generation was told to be role models. Martin Luther King, for example. Malcolm, for example. Harriet Tubman, for example. Jane Goodall, that was one. Jane Goodall, I think, right? Jane Goodall, that was one. A lot of these people. Mahatma Gandhi. I think that, and this is not a attack against those people, because those people have good and bad about them.
Sure.
I think that there's been this prepackaged, acceptable idols that you can have in society that have kind of been just cleanly shifted down throughout generation, so much so that you don't get a lot of variation in which generation has different role models. Perhaps until Gen Alpha, which is the one coming up right now. Because right now, those kids, they're like, 4 or 5, they don't care about Gandhi. They care about TikTok. Their inspirations are TikTok. I have little cousins that they're on TikTok. That's where they're getting their stuff at. The references that they use, the people that they watch, it's TikTok. So their influences and their idols are not going to be the same idols that I had or you guys had. But up until Gen Z, it's been that same package of idols. And I find that very interesting because we now learn a lot of things about those people, like MLK and his affairs and his adultery, Mahatma Gandhi and his brutality towards people. And it makes you kind of question everything you've been told throughout your life. So the question I ask is that, can we really look up to people, or can we look up to the ideas that people sought to embody? I admire Jefferson, not because he was perfect. He wasn't perfect. He literally had children to his slave mistress. But Jefferson tried to embody something that was so radical and so alien to his period of political and social history that he was even at odds with the conventional wisdom of his day, even after becoming president. If you think about it, America, for the first few years of the founding, we had what's called a whiskey tax, right? There was a whiskey rebellion over the whiskey tax. It was a big deal. Washington and Adams maintained the whiskey tax, even though there was a rebellion over it, and there was all kind of chaos happened. Jefferson repealed the whiskey tax. When Jefferson was in Virginia, there were sodomy laws that punished homosexuality, I think, by death. Jefferson, in his forward-thinking way, said, okay, let's actually remove the death penalty and move it down to just jail time. Obviously, he probably would have preferred those laws not to exist in the first place. But this was someone who stood against the cultural norms and mores of his time, and he believed in the universal ideas that have come to define what America is. That is not just inspirational. That's not just aspirational. That's beautiful. Because who do you see in modern society that is trying to embody principles that go beyond our current distracted, social media obsessed era? I don't see. I don't see. Only people I see are the nuns that live in monasteries, or the survivalists that live on the lands and still have landlines and live off the grid, or something like that. And they're far and few between in our current day in society. Yeah. The Amish, I guess, are an example, but still they're very isolated and very insular. Don't really care to have broader societal impact. So who do you see doing that? We lack that same drive and that same vision that previous generations had, and I wonder if it's possible to get that back. I don't know.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I agree with you. But
gentlemen,
that's what
hold on. Chad, go ahead.
I need to log off, so I will say thank you very much for having me on. It was a pleasure chatting with you, gentlemen, as always. And hey, let's do this again in a week for Super Tuesday.
Absolutely. Yeah, now, before you step out of here, where can people find you on social media? Where can they help you? How best can people, wherever you may be, how best can they support what you're doing?
Right. So right there is my my handle at Chad Manley 007. You can follow me on Twitter or X, whatever. In my bio, you will find a link to my novel, Come Out and Play. And check out the pictures that I post. I'm currently on an unhinged rant on X about how mattresses and beds and box springs are a giant scam. Real men sleep on piles of straw and hay. So man up, go sleep in the barn with the animals, and stop forking over your hard-earned money to people who make box springs when it is perfectly fine to sleep on the floor.
Well, there you go. See, you come here thinking it's just going to be all about politics. No, you get philosophy, you get, nerd stuff, you get politics, and now you get advice on good sleep habits. So there you go.
All right, let me flex this out of here, gentlemen.
Yes, of course. Which, by the way, I was trying to do my best to find a picture that would not, cause people to, how shall I say this? The ladies to swoon or the gentlemen to, I was trying.
I noticed that the picture you chose
I was cropping that. Yeah, I was cropping that baby. So I'm just, no. Anyway, dude, it's a pleasure as always to have you here. And again, thank you for your insight. Thank you for your insights and everything you're doing.
Right.
And okay, I'm trying to do this straight on through and not just ignore and just power through. But anyway, brother, good to have you here. We'll see you next Tuesday, if not sooner. You have a great night, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you. See you guys.
All right, be good. That is Chad Manley, ladies and gentlemen. All right, he is out and flexed out. So there you go. It is the top of the hour, and I'll do a real quick commercial. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I'm joined by the inestimable Christian Watson, who we lovingly refer to as the Professor, my good buddy Reuben Christopher Haynes, and Brently from the Dangerous Rhetoric Podcast. And quick update of the numbers as we have them right now. With 21% of the vote in Michigan, you've got Joe Biden obviously declared the winner, but the uncommitted vote is getting bigger. It's up to now almost 30,000. And if you take the percentages that voted for Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson, which Williamson's not even on the ballot, you're talking about roughly that's 17 and a half. Call it, hang on, let me do this real fast. 17.6. Yeah, you're talking about almost 21%. That's going for anybody other than Biden. The other thing I would point out is, and again, this is early, relatively speaking, 21% in, they've got maybe 200,000 votes. Mm-hmm. On the Republican side, however, you've got Trump with 205,000 votes by himself. Let me go back to that number for the Democrats. Total, they've got 205,000. On the Republican side, Trump by himself's got 200,000, and there's about 300,000 total that's voted, 23% in. So, yeah, in one sense, I'm not surprised by the Democrat number because, Biden is the incumbent. So you're not figuring they're going to go, pardon the expression, balls to the walls as far as turning out the vote. But by the same token, it is a primary. Trump's on the other side of it. You would think the Democrats would want to do something to have an impressive number. This might go to the point that you guys were making earlier, that how many of those Democrats are just going to stay at home and go, well, this is my way of protesting.
But it's an open primary, right? It's open.
It is an open primary. Yeah, it is an open primary. So
I wonder if the exit polls even asked people that voted for Haley, will you vote for Trump in the general?
That's a great question.
Because again, most of the people that voted for Haley, I would say 70% are Democrats. So take that into account.
True.
Can you only vote in one or the other?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to see what I can.
Do we even know if Biden, not Biden, but if Trump or Haley are speaking tonight?
As I was monitoring, I haven't seen anything. Oh,
Oh,
Okay, never mind.
sorry.
What the hell?
Sorry.
Mikey Harlow.
I
Oh,
was
Jesus.
trying to, my apologies, gentlemen. I was trying to find
Don't
something
apologize.
by way of information. All right. Reuben, get your mind out of the gutter. Okay.
No.
Seriously.
I just want to. Well, for me, now. It's more like if I see that and going, hey, honey, I got an outfit. It's outfit you wear now.
No, I'm just going out on Twitter just to see what I can find by way of Michigan primary, and now my typing is completely discombobulated by what just happened. All right, put your fingers on the right keys, Brian. There you go.
Thanks, Mike Harlow.
Yeah. Vamp for a second, gentlemen. I'm seeing what I can see by way of information.
But to follow up with you said, Christian, before Chad left, the idea now also what they're doing is they are taking down the Jefferson monuments. They're taking down the monuments of our founders. They're taking down our history so that there is no reference for anybody to go to like a museum or drive by. Who is that, Daddy? What's that? It's all gone. Anything they don't teach history more at all, and it's horrifying that no one reads a book anymore. No, and I take it to the next level when I do not like when they say it's in school. It's all about reading, writing, and arithmetic. No, they're teaching to the test, and on top of that, It should not be reading. It should be comprehension. Read something and explain to me what you just read. What does it mean? What's the story? Writing. How do you express yourself? And people are not expressing themselves. They're not talking. They are just venting now. They're not giving a clear argument. And then the last thing, which is the most important, arithmetic. What about simple budgeting? $34 trillion. $34 trillion, and you have people who are just struggling to pay that because that's money that could have gone to something good that's being spent for wars, being spent for things that it shouldn't be spent on. It's insane. It just boggles the mind.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that a lot of what you're talking about there as well is a product of the standardized testing system that we have. I think that standardized testing generally, in an ideal world. This may not be realistic right now, but in an ideal world, we wouldn't have it. At least that wouldn't be the value decider of someone's education. Because right now, I'm going to teach you what the curriculum is. You're going to go towards this test. You're going to take the test and see if you understand what the curriculum is. See what you understand what you were told. Well, tests which produce grades are the ultimate value decider of one's education. If you get straight A's, you're going to be seen as a genius. If you get straight F's, you're going to be seen as a failure and a flunk out. Even though if you get straight A's, you become a valedictorian, statistically, you're more likely to be a conformist. You're more likely to go ahead and follow what authority says. Because that's why people say, oh my God, you're the valedictorian. That's so impressive. I'm like, no, that shows me that you're willing to bend to the system if you need to. You may be smart enough to do that, but are you smart enough to go out and think outside the box? A lot of entrepreneurs actually don't do too good in school. When they get out, they actually start making things. They do very well in the marketplace. So people might be surprised, I've never been a good student, like a great student. When I was interested in the topic, I got A's, but most of the time I was like a solid B, sometimes even a C student in some topics, especially math. I was a C student in math. I didn't really, because I kind of saw through the scam in general. When I was in high school, I'm like, okay, hold on. 7 years on the line. Is my life going to be impacted by this grade that I got in chemistry class? No. I'm not even going to be reading the periodic table down the line. Not because I'm not interested in it, because it's quite interesting, but still, it just doesn't interest me. But on the other hand, is my life going to be impacted by my knowledge of the American government, by knowledge of American history? Well, yeah. So let me go and study those things. Let me read those things. And I excelled in those things. I think that we should emphasize practical education for kids, right? Yeah. Budgeting, balancing checkbooks, understanding both your local history and your country's history, understanding the importance of those things, understanding the importance of civic engagement, not just voting, but also an understanding of what's going on in your local government. That kind of stuff's going to benefit people more than, I don't know, learning about the Pythagorean theorem is. Not knocking the Pythagorean theorem, but I'm just saying, I've never used it in my professional life. since leaving high school.
Yeah. Well,
I don't even see any isosceles, try whatever they call it. I don't see any of that since leaving high school.
Well, I tell you what, I just got a message from Mr. Brently. So before I do before I let you out of here and off the hook, he has made a contribution in more ways than one to tonight.
No.
Do we have any gentlemen here or anyone in chat who is a fan of Monty Python by chance?
Who isn't?
Well, more particularly Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Do you remember the scene where King Arthur is fighting the Black Knight?
Oh dear gosh.
Well, thanks to our mischievous friend up there in the upper right-hand corner, we have this meme. It's a flesh wound. It's just a flesh wound. I cut off your arm. Just a flesh wound.
Wow.
There you go. The memes are spicy tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But with that, I tell you what, he sent me a message saying he's fading out on us. So I tell you what, give the commercial, give your coordinates. Where can people find you? What can they do to help you and Daniel in your efforts with Dangerous Rhetoric?
You can find us at dangerousrhetoric.com. We're on Spotify, Rumble for the live streams. We have regular stuff on YouTube. You can follow me on X. It's right here. Dangerous Rhetoric's on there at Dangerous Rhet. We back again. I put out like little news blips on Instagram and TikTok. So if you're on those, you can find me at Brently or Dangerous Rhetoric. And thank you so much for hosting this wonderful conversation. It was nice seeing all you boys here. And then sparring. I love, jabbing,
Of
Christopher
course.
Washington. So fun to joust with you. You're so smart.
Always. No, you're too kind. But yeah, you have a nice night, man. Good seeing you again.
No,
I'm so tired.
No, sir. It is always a pleasure to have you here. As I tell everyone, you are always welcome on this electronic front porch. And dude, you bring the spice and everything that goes with it to these conversations. And I'm serious, dude. I am glad to have you. I love you like a brother. And you and Daniel, keep on doing what you're doing. You have a great night, brother.
Likewise. Take care. Stay safe. Stay sane.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right. I tell you what, since it is the quarter of the hour, let's go around the horn. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. We are covering the Michigan primary results tonight. I've got Reuben Christopher Haynes here with me and the professor, Christian Watson, and a quick update on numbers. From the Democrat primary on the Michigan side, 23% of the vote is in. Joe Biden obviously declared the winner. He's back above 80%, which I suppose is good, all things considered. However, he's got a big problem, and it's called Mr. Uncommitted, which is now above 30,000 votes. And again, this is with 23,000 in. Reuben, I think you're right. This thing's going to crack 150,000 by the time all this votes tallied. I mean, if that pace keeps up, and keep in mind, Biden only won Michigan by about 154,000 votes last time. Right. And now you've got a protest vote that is equal to his margin. And keep in mind, this is low turnout. This is low turnout for the Democrats in the Michigan primary. On the other side of that aisle, they've got 218,000 Democrats who voted so far. And granted, that's not the whole number, but on the other side, Trump by himself has got everything that the Democrats have got total. So take that for what it's worth. And again, they've got 332,000 Republicans voting so far. They've only got a quarter of the vote in. So you got to figure, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong on the math. If a quarter is 200,000 votes for Trump, am I doing the math right? He could get upwards of over 800,000 votes if the pace keeps up.
You're asking the wrong one. I'm terrible at that. You're asking the wrong one.
I'll go to my numbers guy, Reuben the Racketeer.
Yeah.
Reuben, am I doing the math right on this?
Oh, yeah.
Rackets Reuben over there. Yeah.
Well, it could be it could be approaching a million. Well, that almost a million because 250,000 would put it at a million. So you're working at over 800,000 votes.
Okay, up in Connecticut, saying it could be upwards of 900,000 votes. I could agree with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I mean, I don't know what the record is on the Republican side, but daggone, that's got to be close. I mean, again, I don't know what the number is, but still, that's impressive. I don't care who you are, Donald Trump or not. That's still an impressive number if he winds up racking up 900,000. That's going to be amazing.
But the mainstream media is going to tout the fact that Haley is still in it. Again, they're just as delusional as Haley is. Because again, that's the whole idea. Because again, they're not going to.
No, go ahead.
So they're not going to tout. Sorry,
go ahead.
Sorry,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're not going to look if Haley cracks 100,000, or actually if she's going to hit if close to 200,000, it's going to be they are going to tout that number. They're going to tout any number of her if the margin is 20% difference. They're going to do it 20, 25, 30. They're going to still say it's Haley's still in it to do that things. And the fact that nothing's happened yet, no one said anything at all. I'm monitoring the news unless anybody's spoken, and I don't think anybody's put out any tweet or anything like that. So no, this is getting crazy already.
Yeah. So do we know if Haley and Trump are going to speak tonight?
They should. I'll be very surprised. I'll be very surprised if they don't. I mean, Trump's already been declared the winner. I'm a little surprised in one sense that he's not already down on the microphone, if for no other reason to keep her from beating him to it. Because remember that stunt she pulled in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I want to see their speeches. I'm curious to see what they're going to try to say.
Well, I mean, in her case, I mean, just to go back to the numbers, and again, I realize that spin is spin. I get she's got to say something, but then again, what do you say to this if you're her? She's getting her number doubled up. He's got what is that, 130,000 vote lead? If I'm doing the math, 130,000 vote lead. He's doubling her, past double, and it could get uglier before the night is done.
Yeah, he can get up to 70.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he could get up to 70%. I mean, just for the sake of argument, let's see where the vote's coming in from. You got to figure the UP is gonna give him even better numbers than that. In some of these counties, I mean, let's just take for the sake of discussion, just for argument here. Yeah, I mean, he's got, some of these counties, let's say Tuscola, let's just go with the big stuff. Let's start with Detroit. And not a lot of Republicans. There's only 2% of the vote in what would be Wayne County, which is Detroit. Okay. That's just barely anything yet. Grand Rapids, again, 15% of the vote. Again, she's doing a little bit better there, but not by much. That's Kent County. You figure Lansing. That's what, 10% of the vote. Yeah, yep. This could get just ugly before it's all said and done.
It could. Yeah, she's not carrying a single county so far. Not a single one.
No. Yeah. I mean, this is bad. Now, and here's the other consideration. Keep in mind, there's 55 delegates that will be that make up Michigan's total. Only 16 of them are awarded tonight. The other 39 are awarded in caucuses that are done over this weekend. So, I mean, Trump's going to get most, if not all of it. He'll probably get all of it. But still, I mean, you're right. She can't win a single county. She can't even get close to his vote total. She's getting, her doors blown off. I mean, if you're her, what do you come to the microphone and say? Yay, I'm still here. I mean, it just, there's no amount of spin that makes this any better. This is just,
you're right.
I said it the other night. Yeah, I mean, I said the other night, I quoted the legendary Dale Earnhardt Sr. quote, that's what you call an ass kicking. That's just, this is just ugly, So, I'm kind of like you. I'm very curious to hear the speech. But then again, that may be part of the reason. That may be part of the reason for the delay is they're trying to figure out, what do you say to this? You know,
I'm not trying to laugh. This is just so clownish. So her being in the race still is just so clownish. Seriously.
Well, it goes back to Brent's point from earlier. It's like she's trying to foist herself on a Republican electorate that does not want her. I mean, might be a nice lady if she weren't running for office. I mean, you'd want to sit down and have a cup of coffee with her and talk.
No, I wouldn't.
Like, okay, I mean,
no, thanks. No.
You know, I mean, all right. A lot of other people might want to have a cup of coffee with her and sit down and have a conversation.
Well, a lot of guys would want to do that.
Oh my.
Well,
I mean, that's actually interesting you mentioned that, Reuben. I kind of want to lean into this because
all right.
Character does matter for a presidential candidate. I think one of the reasons why Donald Trump has been able to avoid similar criticisms is because even though he's had infidelity in his own past, he hasn't run away from it. He hasn't pretended like he's this pure soul. He hasn't tried to hide or conceal things. And that's why people like him a lot. And that's why a lot of the same folks who criticize Haley for her stuff give Trump kind of, I don't want to say a pass, but they're more understanding because Trump is Trump and we already know what he's about. His image has been there for years. Whereas Haley has painted herself as this Christian woman, this, renewed and conservative lady, and she's cheating on her husband, who she brings up every other moment with lobbyists for political favors. Like, it at some point, your character is just so rotten that no amount of... She hasn't even admitted it, by the way. She refuses to admit it. She completely refuses to admit it, which is amazing. So character-wise, I think that Haley alone on that basis is just wrong. Forget about the cheating of the husband thing. She promised President Trump that she would not run if he ran again.
Yeah.
She's not a woman of her word. She broke her word. She broke... I don't care if you had a change of heart. You should have called him and said, hey, I'm thinking about this. She didn't do that. She went back on her word to seek out her own advantage, which is just wrong. So the cheating, the lying, the political opportunism, she just strikes me as your I don't want to say a narcissist because she seems a little bit too, I don't know, narcissists tend to be a little bit more assertive and they tend to be a little bit more self-assured. She's just a manipulator is what she is. She's a manipulator.
Yeah.
One of my friends called her a harpy. Remember those birds, like a harpy bird?
I know that reference. I know what you're talking about. And I tell you what, I want to put these Republican numbers back up here. And the reason that I do that, and I know I'm a few minutes ahead of the quarter of the hour update, but I want to do that because of what the commander just dropped, another super chat. And thank you so very much. It's extraordinarily kind of you. He just went out and tallied and got some numbers for the sake of comparison. The record for total number of votes in a GOP primary was 2016, 1,383,000. Primary, the highest total for a Republican candidate was back in 2000 with the late John McCain, 650,000. The record margin of victory was 11.87% when Trump beat Cruz in 2016. Folks, at the rate it's going, and again, it's a long way from being counted, Trump's going to blast through John McCain's record of number of vote raw total. Number two, the Republicans may crack their own record that they set back in 2016, but they'll be close. It'll be close because you figure 27% right now. They could do it maybe, but it'll be close. But the margin of victory, he's going to blow that out. Absolutely blow that out. And Commander, thank you for the numbers and for the super chat. It's very gracious of you. I genuinely appreciate it. But yeah, well, it's now the bottom of the hour. I'll just go over the Democrat side. But yeah, these are the records for the state of Michigan in a primary on the Republican side. they could wind up beating all three of these tonight. And keep in mind, this is an open primary. This isn't pure Republican vote. Now, I say that with the caveat, you might have a few Democrats crossing over, but they're not going to admit it. At least voting for Trump. Probably some of them are voting for Haley, but not that many, which might go to explain why she's getting her rear end kicked as bad as she is. On the Democrat side, they have 230,000 voting. Biden's obviously the winner, but the number that everybody's keeping an eye on, or at least we are anyway, is this number of uncommitted. There's like 25% of the vote in. They're at 34,000 right now. 68. That could wind up being, let me do some fast math here, 136,000 if this pace keeps up for the rest of the night. And just to give you some perspective on that, these were some numbers I found on Twitter. Again, I have not had a chance to independently verify them on my own, but back in 2008, 40% of the vote in the Democrat primary was uncommitted, and that was like 230,000 votes. This percentage is going to be big, and the raw number is going to be huge. And that's all. If it winds up going to the total that I think it could, which is like 136,000 votes, that's almost the same margin that Joe Biden won Michigan in 2020. So Democrats, you can dismiss this, but you do so to your own peril. If y'all in the Biden White House are thinking that somehow this is, oh, no, they'll be fine, they'll come back to us in November, this thing between Israel and Hamas will straighten itself out, we'll be fine. No. That the bloom's off that rose. That argument's gone. You can't legitimately make that anymore in light of what's being done to you tonight by your own primary voters. They're not willing to vote for the president in large enough numbers. It's noticeable. And as was observed earlier in the day by another what I call polytuber, this is the first test. Well, polytube, political science tube, or for lack of
I thought you meant something else. I'm like, what is that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, just poli-sci tube, maybe. Poli-sci tube.
I thought you go about Haley's sexual appetites. Poly, just kidding, right?
Moving right along. He dropped that in, Chris. It does get spicy on these live streams on occasion. But my point being, there was another poli-sci YouTuber by name, it goes by the title of Real American, and does fantastic work, by the way. Give him a sub if you're not subbed to him already. But he made a valid point. This is the first time this election cycle where you get a true sense of any vulnerabilities that Joe Biden has in his base. Because up to now, you've been able to mask it. You didn't really see it in New Hampshire. You didn't see it in Iowa because South Carolina was the first official contest. The Democrats already had the cake baked on that one. This is the first time you genuinely see it. And for the first time out, they got problems, and they're big problems. So I'll throw it to you guys with your comments. Yeah, they got.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was talking about coalitions earlier today, and that in order for a coalition to be politically effective, part of it has to be unified. And there was this big debate that ensued about if these people would actually depart from a Biden, voting for Biden in November 2024. Again, I think there are some issues for certain constituencies that are a big enough deal that that would weigh more than their loyalty to some party. I absolutely believe that for Palestinian Americans, for a lot of Arab Americans, the issue of what they would call Palestinian liberation is so important to them that it would absolutely factor into how they see the Biden administration in terms of how they handle that issue. So I personally don't think we can just ignore this and just look the other way. This is a problem. Not only is this a problem organically, This is being organized by a sizable grassroots faction within the Democratic Party. I think we saw Rashida Tlaib or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a problem. The squad and all of them who control the grassroots of the party, they've been a problem for a very long time. Nancy Pelosi was able to kind of handle them and kind of rein them in, but they still became a problem. So personally, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but this constituency is very impacted by this issue. And tensions have never been this high between Israel and Palestine to this extent where there's actually war in the past few election cycles. So we don't really have a good reference point to see what might happen. But my gut tells me that we're going to see defections this November if Biden does not handle this Israel thing right. If he continues to handle it in the way he's handling it, he's going to that constituency that he's relying on, that Muslim constituency in Michigan, will continue to fall from him. But also, just beyond the Palestine thing, let's talk about the identity politics thing, the gender identity thing, the inappropriate concepts in school thing. Because Muslim American parents were actually at the forefront with Christian parents, especially in Dearborn, Michigan, calling out books like Genderqueer and so on and so forth. Biden's educational infrastructure has been the one pushing for that in so many different ways. So he's already alienated himself from that constituency. It's only going to get worse. So I don't know. Who do these traditionalist foreign Muslim Americans go with? Do they go with the guy who is currently leading in their state and who seems to have a semblance of respect for traditional values? Or do they go with the guy who is mismanaging the Israel-Palestine situation and causing more bloodshed in the Arab world, and who also, in so many different ways, was behind the pushing of inappropriate concepts in school in the name of equity and inclusion?
They'll vote for Kennedy or Stein or West before they vote for Trump.
I agree with you. I don't think they're going to go for Trump. I agree with you because Trump has kind of ruined himself with the Muslim community after the travel ban thing, even though it was totally just, in my opinion, and we should have an even bigger travel ban next time around. But that kind of, the optics of that played up by the media, which called him, did that really hurt him with those kind of voters? So I would agree with you. They wouldn't vote for Trump. Most likely not.
Yeah, or to go to the other point, they may just sit at home. They're like, I'm sitting on my hands. I'm telling you, there is a bunch of vote out there, and it's been consistent in polls ever since January of 2023 that's showing that 20 to 30% do not want Joe Biden to be the standard bearer of the Democrat Party going into re-election. And this is now the first time you are seeing, and I'll put this number back up here, you've got 17.2. You've got 20%. If you take uncommitted Williamson and Phillips, you add together, there's 20% of the Democrat Party by their own registered vote that is saying, we're not voting for Biden. We would as soon vote for anybody else other than Biden. Doesn't matter if it's Williamson, doesn't matter if it's Phillips, or it's just none of the above, which really that's what uncommitted is. It's none of the above. Let's just be honest about it. So
I wonder. Sorry, Reuben. Sorry, go on.
No, fine. No, well, go ahead.
That's just a quick question. I do wonder if Biden was not on the ballot, which one of those candidates, alternative candidates, we think would actually be winning? Would it be Phillips? Would it be Williamson? Who would it be?
That's a good question. Well, this works from the assumption somebody other than those two doesn't get in.
Yeah,
Newsom,
you're right.
Newsom, Whitmer, JD Pritzker of Illinois, among others whose names are bandied about. But if it's just those two, I'd say probably Phillips, because Williamson, nice lady, Democrats won't touch her with a 10-foot pole. Just
right,
she's
kind of
a little out there for their taste.
Yeah, abstract, very abstract in her thinking.
That's the diplomatic way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah, and you have to remember something. What is Biden's strategy against Trump? His strategy is, in my opinion, he's going to be a dictator. MAGA is evil. That's his strategy. It's not about what I've done. It's about this guy will do bad things to you, which he's projecting, because again, Biden's the one that's actually doing all these things, arresting parents at school council meetings or PTA meetings, pushing books. But the narrative is, we're trying to remove books that are inappropriate in schools, and then you've got Gavin Newsom in the mainstream media saying they're trying to ban books. No. And you had Joy Reid talking recently also about there are too many Americans, and why are they telling us to have more children? We're already, and that's so odd, because they don't want for immigrants to come here, but they want more kids. We want people who are here because they do it legally. Because again, you start with a grain of truth. You're coming to America. We are a land of immigrants, because it's again, they always talk about, well, we welcome everybody. We welcome everybody that go through the golden door. That's the line in the Lazarus poem that no one talks about. Through the door. You do it legally. My brother married a Mexican national, and they had all their kids in Mexico, and they had to wait 7 years to bring everybody over, but they did it legally. They have dual citizenship now, and that's the proper thing to do. Do it legally. That's why I'm saying, that's why you have the Asian, and that's why they're going to do the whole thing, Asian hate again. They're going to do all of the nonsense going to happen again, because again, the hardest working people are the Asians and the people that came over here from poor countries. And they did it with Larry Elder in California. He's the black face of white supremacy. It's insane. And that's not him saying anything. It's wrong. It's the media's portrayal, how they will push it out there. It's insane.
Oh, I absolutely agree. But there is one question that I have, and I would like your guys' take on this. I have always said, or at least it's been taught to me, but I agree wholeheartedly with the idea. It's not enough to be willing to vote against someone. You have to be willing to vote for somebody. And this is the problem, I think, one of them, in the arguments about why Joe Biden should be reelected. Because the argument for reelecting him is not, hey, vote for me because I'm doing such a great job. The argument is, vote for me because I'm not as bad as the other schmuck. And that's I'm being crass about it, but you boil it all down, that's his argument. I mean, what has he said? Don't look, I'm not an angel, but look at the alternative, or I'm not wording it exactly the way he's phrasing it, but that's basically what it comes down to. You think I'm bad, look at the alternative. Look at this guy. Look at J6. Look at him trying to overthrow the government, leading a coup and everything else. He ought to be thrown off the ballot. He shouldn't even be here, yada, yada, yada. And at this point, it's not working because people want to be for something as opposed to be against something. They want to be aspirational in their vote as opposed to saying, oh, God, I really don't like you, but that guy's even worse. I'll vote for you. You're not quite so bad. That's not going to be enough. Not in this economy, not under these economic conditions, not when you got the problems at the southern border the way you do, and not when you got America almost, well, I shouldn't say almost, up to its neck in 2 different military conflicts around the world. It's not enough to say, I'm going to vote against the other guy. The American people want to vote for something that's positive, affirming, and is different than the situation they find themselves in now. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few things to say about that. I'll try to be brief, though. I don't want to go on too far. There's this old, you guys probably know it better than I do, this old Clapton song, right? Before You Accuse Me, I think is what the song is called. Yeah. It's a great song. I love it. It's on my playlist. But that song is about a relationship, but it can be applied to politics as well. I think one of the most oldest tactics in the political handbook is character assassination. Yeah. And character assassination of your opponent is not just about your opponent. it's also about misdirecting attention from you, especially if you can find something as scandalous as possible that puts all the attention up on them and gives them bad press. And I think that mentality has created a lesser of two evils culture that we have in our country. I call it a culture because a lot of Americans have trained themselves to believe that because the ballot box is structured in one way, their thinking has to be structured in the same way. So because the ballot box is red or blue, they have to think in terms of red or blue without realizing that red and blue, the two binary choices on the ballot box, is actually a relatively recent phenomenon, and that throughout American history, we sometimes, some periods of history, had multiple parties running around, that not just two parties. So and beyond that, they don't even think beyond the system because they're thinking you're trapped by the system. They don't even think the fact that political parties actually have consequences, tangible consequences for a republic in its health. Most of the time, they are unhealthy for a republic because they create factionalism by their very nature. And what is the number one thing that the founders warned about in the Federalist Papers? It was the passions of faction. I think it was Madison that said that. The passions of faction. It's one of the reasons they wanted a tiered Republican-type system to mete out and filter out the passions of faction and to prevent them from taking hold on a democratic, larger scale. Well, what's happened is the people that have those same factionalist passions have infiltrated the Republican system and managed to enlarge the Republican system in a way that it was never meant to be enlarged by way of the administrative state, and then use that structure to infect the thinking of people. People now believe that you need welfare in a government in order to be compassionate. People now believe that you need a bloated military in the government in order to be safe and protected. People believe all this nonsense stuff because the system has inflicted it upon them, and they don't read history, they don't study philosophy, they do nothing more than simply accept the norms and dogmas of the day. So lesser of two evils comes from all that. But if evil is evil and you are a morally convicted people, you're not going to sit there and take that stuff. You're going to reject evil from the offset and look for a better opinion or a better option, even if the structure of the system doesn't give it to you. Yes, it's true. Christian Watson sits here and says, red and blue are not the only choices you have. The red and blue are the ones that have the money to raise candidates. Red and blue are the ones that have the money to get media attention, and red and blue are the ones who ultimately tend to decide the presidency. It's an unfortunate fact, but they're still not the only choices that you have. They're only like that because people are complacent in our current system. If people weren't complacent and they demanded more and they actually acted rationally towards a different goal, the two-party system would die. Just like legacy media is dying because people like us, you guys probably never thought back in the 90s that legacy media would be replaced by a bunch of people on the internet just talking into their microphones. That's probably an absurd idea.
Yeah.
In the same way that was an absurd idea 30 years ago, getting rid of the two-party system is probably an absurd idea right now, but it's not impossible. It's absolutely possible. Ross Perot showed that it's doable, but Donald Trump showed even more that it's doable because even though he worked within the party system, his thinking goes outside of the party system. That's the important thing to recognize.
Well,
anyway,
I'm just wondering how much of MAGA America First could not be appropriately labeled the revenge of Ross Perot, because I'm not saying every idea that Ross Perot adopted is now part of America First, but there's a lot of it that's there. I'm just saying.
Yep.
And before we go any further, let me give a quick quarter of the hour update. Again, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I'm joined by Christian Watson and Reuben Christopher Haynes. And on the Democrat side, just giving a quarter of the hour update, 28% of the vote is in. Biden, obviously the winner. But the number that everybody's keeping an eye on tonight is uncommitted, which right now is at 38,000. And in the last three elections, just for perspective, the best that could ever be mustered on average was like 20,000 and a half. They have blasted past that. They're probably headed for over 100,000 votes on uncommitted on the Democrat side. On the Republican side, Trump is running away with it and may very well break the record for most votes received in a Republican presidential primary. The record is held by the late Senator John McCain from back in 2000. he had, let me see if I can find that that super chat again.
Is that a 30-point difference? Just kidding.
Yeah. That's a 40-point difference, bro. Almost 40 points.
Oh my.
Just saying. Yeah. It's
30.
almost 40-point difference.
Oh, 60.
And it was-
Oh my God, 60. Jesus.
Yeah. And yeah, John McCain's record is 650,000. Trump is halfway there, and they don't even have 30% of the vote in yet, or a little over 30%, I should say. So yeah, he's on his way to blasting through John McCain's old record. There's going to be a lot of records set on the Republican side tonight. I have a feeling margin of victory, raw vote total, and number of votes obtained by the winner. Those three records could, two of them for sure are going to be broken. All three of them could wind up going down before this night's over with. So, yeah, just saying. I mean, we'll keep. I mean, is any Reuben? I know you're keeping an eye on, but has anybody heard anything from the candidates yet?
No, I haven't seen anything yet.
No, are they even doing speeches tonight? Can we check somehow?
Well, I mean, yeah, like I said, I would have. Yeah, if anybody in chat, by the way, and yeah, Gypsy, I saw that. So I mean, if there's anybody in the Michigan area who's watching tonight, like Commander, I know you're doing it. Gypsy, you're here. If anybody's got to duck out, you're not going to get any grief from me. Obviously, do what you need to do to take care of yourselves and be safe wherever you are in the Michigan area. So yeah, we're loving you. We love you. We're praying for you. But yeah, to answer your question, Chai, yeah, he did drop out, but his name is still on the ballot. So he's still getting a handful of votes. You know, not that many, but he is getting a handful. But yeah, this is shaping up to be a very historic night on both sides. But for Biden, I bet you he wishes he had Trump's problem as opposed to having the one he's got right now. So just saying. But yeah, I mean, if anybody hears that the candidates are speaking, let us know. I mean, it's almost 11 o'clock now. I was thinking about wrapping it up at around 11, you know, just for everyone's sake. But and of course, if they come on, we'll go right in on it. But you know, at this point, I'm a little surprised. At least one of them, either Trump or Haley, hasn't come to the microphone yet. I really am. I mean,
I don't see anything yet.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's where we are right now. Like I say, I'll be, regardless of whether it's here tonight or wherever, I'm gonna be very curious to hear Haley's comments, because what do you do here? It's just, what do you do? You know, even if you doubled Nikki Haley's total right now, she's still 50,000 votes behind Trump. Where do you know? If she wants to stay until Super Tuesday, you know, she's a candidate. It's her choice. I'm not trying to stop her. Although I think she's doing a disservice to her party on so many different levels. But, you know, I can't stop her from doing it. But after tonight, there is no rationale for her to stay in. There's just not.
None.
No, there's really not. And I'm not saying that because I am not saying that because I'm supporting somebody else. I'm just being realistic here with the numbers. You know, I mean, people can like Trump, not like Trump, choose to vote for him, choose not to vote for him. Perfectly fine. But there is no rationale for her to stay in. There's not. Just saying. So,
yeah, I'm checking to see if they're making anything about speeches.
Nothing right now.
There's nothing about cancellation either. So you would think they were going to be speaking.
No, I doubt. I mean, they're going to make a statement. I am a little surprised they're taking this long to do it. That's the part that kind of gets me. I mean, you know, like I said, you would understand if Trump came to the mic early, especially after what she did in New Hampshire. But even he's not saying anything, and she's definitely not saying anything. And for my part, I think the reason she's not saying anything, she's trying to figure out, what do you say? How do you spin this? You know, I don't expect her to drop out tonight. I don't necessarily even expect her to drop out tomorrow morning. But if you're her and you're her camp, what do you go to the microphone and say? There's nothing good in these totals that you can spin. I mean, and here's the worst consideration. This is an open primary, and she can't even do well. This is the result realistically speaking, this is the result that should have happened in South Carolina, but didn't. And even with an open primary in Michigan, she can't get above 30% of her own 30% vote. What do? I don't know. I just don't know if you're her.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I agree.
So quite a night indeed. No, it's not that any of us forgot how to talk, folks. I just kind of had one of those awkward pause moments that occasionally happens in the middle of a live stream. So there you go. So,
yeah, I'm sure. I'm so curious about these speeches because normally, I mean, I think when South Carolina closed, like speeches happen within minutes of the polls closing.
Right.
This is just weird.
I mean, she was maybe, if I remember correctly, 15, 20 minutes after the polls closed, she went to the microphone to make her statement.
Yeah.
So, I just, like I say, I'm a little surprised. I mean, granted, the poll officially, both Eastern time zone and Central time zone closed at 9:00 Eastern. So it's been almost 2 hours and there's no statement from her. That's kind of surprising. Really, it is. But like I said, maybe they're trying to figure out, to pardon my expression, how do you shine a turd? Well, maybe that's what they're trying to figure out how to do.
Right.
Just saying. So yeah, like I say, we're gonna give it a few more minutes, and then for everyone's sake, because I know everybody's got lives and jobs, and Christians traveled from across the country, and by the way, if you don't mind my asking,
yeah,
I think you said you were out in Wyoming. Where were you giving a speech?
Wyoming, Laramie, Wyoming, at the University of Wyoming in Laramie.
Ooh, Laramie.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, nice place. That area of the country is like real Americana. Seriously, that area of the country is full of people that really are connected to the land. They believe in community. They believe in association voluntarily. They believe in freedom, most importantly. There are a lot of freedom-oriented conservatives out in Wyoming, seriously. I think that if you want to really understand America, go out to the area where the frontier used to be. Go out to the Midwest. Go out to that entire area.
Yeah.
That's America, in my opinion. Of course, the East Coast and West Coast, they're America too. But the American spirit is no longer concentrated in these urban areas. Yeah, it's not. Exactly. It's not concentrated in the urban areas. Maybe when they were first starting, it was. Absolutely. When they were still growing. But these days, urban areas have kind of squashed the American spirit and replaced it with something commercial, artificial, and fake that is influenced oftentimes by ideologies that are just fundamentally anti-American, which is why so many cities are leftist and so many cities are influenced by ideas that are not American, that are opposed to American. So, and I as someone that lives in the Northeast myself, I just don't see a lot of spirit out here. Now, you go up further to like Maine, places like that, that's pretty, right? That entire area is pretty. But you go up to Vermont, which is basically just forest and mountains, it's socialist up there. They're like communist communes in the woods. So, I mean, yeah, no, I think that the Midwest gets a lot of flack for a lot of different reasons. But that area of the country reminds me what it means to be an American, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm.
So who were you invited by, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah, the Turning Point USA chapter there.
Ooh, nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. I think the kids out there appreciated my message. Yeah, it was interesting because even out there in the middle of America, there is still a very large leftist element amongst the students. And a lot of them were actually, I don't want to say they were threatened, but they didn't like my presence on campus, I was told. They didn't like it. No. So universities really are their own universe. And we have to really look into that. Because if in the middle of America, you have that same kind of Marxist mentality that we see all across universities in America, that's a problem. That's sort of an infiltration in our society to a certain extent. That's a problem.
Wow.
It's a problem.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I agree completely. Leah has said that she just apparently Trump has already spoken over an audio recording in Michigan. He wasn't there in person. Only one I could find so far. I've got a link here if you guys want me to put it up.
Has Haley spoken yet?
If she has, I haven't heard about it. But then again, I've been kind of keeping a
audio recording.
Yeah, audio recording. at least for Trump anyway. But yeah, let me see what I can do.
Bidenomics is crushing.
Sorry about that. Let me get past all this nonsense, or try to anyway. Keep talking, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's just crazy what's going on here. Just trying to figure it all out.
It is.
Again, if we did a quick audio recording, because he's probably in flight, moving somewhere, doing things, and maybe that's the whole idea. And the fact that there are storms in the area, Michigan area, so that could be also that something's going on too, and it's not, I don't know.
Well, I tell you what, let me do this real quick. Just since we're at the top of the hour anyway, I'll just go ahead and give a quick update of numbers. Again, it's 11 o'clock Eastern. My name is Brian Trippett on the Front Porch Conservative, and this is Christian Watson. This is Reuben Christopher Haynes. On the Republican side, with 36% reporting, Donald Trump was declared the winner at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. And Nikki Haley is losing by almost 40 points. And and on the Democrat side, and this to me is the bigger story of the night, and I think everyone's agreeing on this. Joe Biden declared the winner. That's not necessarily the story. The story is you've got an uncommitted vote of now 40,000 with 30% of the vote coming in. Yeah, this is going to go over 120,000 at this point. May even go higher if this pace keeps up. So you figure 120, call it 121. Then another 10% on top of that. Yeah, you're talking about 125,000 votes of anybody other than Joe Biden. If you tack on the votes for Williamson and Phillips, then you've got the margin of victory that Biden had in Michigan when he won it in 2020. And that same number is now voting for anybody other than Joe Biden. And keep in mind, this is low turnout for the Democrats.
Right.
This is a huge problem in Michigan, just huge. And Commander says, again, thank you for the super chat. They may wait for the caucus to make a statement talking about Haley. The primaries are worth 16 delegates. The caucuses are worth 39. We don't know who our chairman. Yeah, that's one big problem they've got in Michigan right now. It is just on the GOP side, the structure of the party right now is a mess. It's just open warfare over there. And that may be what Haley's people are waiting to do. I'd be a little surprised if she didn't make some kind of a statement tonight. But anyway, where Trump is concerned, I'll go ahead and play this. So give me 1 second here and let you guys hear this. It runs about 4 minutes. We'll let it go in its entirety and then talk about it and see if anybody's got reactions to it. So here we go.
So Dan, I just got to cut you off. I'm sorry, Dan.
Have to respond.
Yeah, Dan. I think former President Trump is calling into the Michigan Republican Watch Party. Let's just listen if that's the case.
Get greater than ever before, and I just want to thank everybody. You've been incredible, and I'm so proud of the results because they're far greater than anticipated. So thank you all very much, and I'll be seeing you over the next period of 9 months and long beyond that. Thank you very much, and deep congratulations.
Okay, it was a very short statement, but then again, when you're winning by the kind of margin he is, do you really need to talk for a long time? Just saying.
Yeah.
So there you go. We'll give it another little bit and see if maybe Haley is going to make a statement tonight. And Leah, thank you.
I'll probably be rolling out soon. Yeah,
that's not a problem. But yeah, I mean. Matter of fact, I tell you what, just for everyone's sake, let's just go ahead and cap it for the night. And that way be fair to everybody. So I tell you what, we'll go around. First of all, I want to thank everybody tonight who's been here. This crowd has been fantastic, both on YouTube and Rumble. We've had on both sides quite a large number of people here. For everybody who's here, thank you so much. And I'll just commercial for myself. If you're not a subscriber to my channel on YouTube and Rumble, give a friend a sub. And for all the super chats tonight, thank you so much. You guys are being exceedingly generous. It's greatly appreciated. So tell you what, Christian, we'll start with you. Where can people find you on social media? What can they do to support you, help your efforts, help what you're doing grow?
You can find me on Twitter at Official C. Watson and on YouTube at Christian Watson Politics. Really, just commenting, watching, and sharing my content. I'm doing my best to bring a different take on the issues of the day. I'm doing my best to bring a more edifying way at looking at current events than we have right now in the current political conversation. So just people just engaging. That means a lot to me. It means a great deal to me. And you'd be helping a young man support his entrepreneurial dreams if you do so. So, yeah.
Very good, very good, very good. And to the other half of the 21st century's Hunt Brently, we turn it over to Reuben Christopher Haynes. Reuben, where can people find you on social media? What are your coordinates? Where can people help you? What can they do to support your efforts as well?
I'm all over the place. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Rumble, and X at Reuben Haynes, and I'm trying to launch my consulting business back again. So what I've also done recently this week, I've started alt-right fitness because I basically lost 250 pounds of tumors last year. I want to lose 140 more. I have a condition called myasthenia gravis. You can go hear my story on my channel. It's all about, it's an autoimmune, very rare autoimmune condition that I have, but I've been fighting back. And again, I'm looking for work right now. I'm trying to get my whole point now in life is, last year I said I don't want to live by working for corporations. I've worked for all the corporations. I actually did work for Pfizer. I worked for McDonald's. I did some work for everybody. All these corporations where I thought weren't speaking truth to be authentic to people. So my good mission in life on my channel on YouTube is for men's health, men's issues. What we do to go out there. Rumble, it's more political. We have to stand up and get back to the values that the founders set. The Federalist Papers, what Jefferson said, what Madison said, what Adams talked about, what Washington talked about. We have to go back to those values and go back. And my big goal I want to do is I want to build a real algorithm that can just be a law that reverses all of these crazy laws and goes back to what the 10th Amendment says. All the power goes to the states. We need to get back to the power of states, power to the people. It's very critical. So follow me everywhere. My information's there. I have my PayPal and Venmo and all that stuff there if you can help out, because I'm just right now looking for work. I've been unemployed now for a year now, trying to get my life back and get that things going. But I'm working really hard to get my life back and live. And I have marriage coming up next year, and everything's going to be going my way. I feel that way. But follow me for more information. I'm on X2. Thank you.
And before I give my sign off, I do want to. Gypsy is a dear follower of this channel. She just is passing on some information since she is in. That's in Dearborn. Now, one of the heavier Muslim populations in the state, and again, to quote the legendary Earnhardt, that's what you call an ass kicking.
Damn.
And just saying, yeah. Anyway, thank you for that, Gypsy. We genuinely appreciate it. Folks, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. You can find me on YouTube and Rumble. Please subscribe to both of my channels if you're not subscribed already. As I jokingly tell people all the time, I'm a going little concern. I like to be a going big concern before it's all said and done. You can find me on Twitter at the Front Porch C1. I'm also on various other places, Gettr and Truth Social. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will be back this Thursday night for Chatting on the Porch with the Indian Jesus. Came across this young man through a conversation he was having with Mike Harlow, and we struck out and said, "Hey, you want to come on?" He's like, "Yep, let's do it." I'm like, "Okay, here's the date, here's the time." So we'll be back 7:30 Eastern this Thursday night for a conversation with the Indian Jesus, and that's gonna be awesome. We'll be back with more videos, and thank you guys so much. So from all of us, for Brently, for Chad, Christian, Reuben, myself, thank you very much. You guys have a good night, and we will see you next time.